What is up, everybody? Bright Suns. Here with the one and only Dave, who I will just be calling Q from here on out because Dave is just weird. I called you Dave around the house the other day, and Crystal was like, "Who are you talking about?" So
That's okay.
you guys should know Dave. Oh my gosh, my watch. You guys should know Dave QS Trips on Instagram. If you QS underscore trips, Q's trips. If you are not following him, you are missing out on not only wonderful Disney content, but just wonderful travel content and stuff in general. So you guys need to make sure you're following him.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So I figure we'll say what's up to everybody in the comments here. I see both of our loving wives are here supporting us. So thank
Yep.
you, ladies. You guys are the best. We also have Alex here. So hey guys, ready for this live? Good vibe, good vibe, good vibes. We got Ethan here as well. Marty's Adventures. We got the Mesmerize here. Ready to hear everyone's thoughts on the season. Yes, yes. Alex has got his popcorn ready to go as well. So there are two smart fellows excited for the live stream. Oh, thank you, man. We are Q is as smart as he looks. I just get by on my charm. So but yeah, so let's jump into it. Q, the first thing I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
as we jump into this is I figure so we could kind of set everyone in here's like idea of when we say we really liked it, like rank the other Star Wars shows for me, but leave this season of Mandalorian out. So like rank, if you had to break down the Star Wars shows we've gotten so far, how would you put them in an order? Each season has its own ranking, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I would probably do Mandalorian season 1 as one, based predominantly on having next to no preconceived notions. So there was nothing really there for me to kind of judge it against. It was its own thing. Totally exceeded everything I was expecting. So that's one. Two is Andor. I liked how different it felt. I appreciated. I know you and I have talked like IRL that like it was a adults feeling Star Wars show. You know what I mean? It felt like it had dealt with some really like serious issues and everything. So that's two. Mandalorian season 2 would probably fall underneath that. And then Obi-Wan, which was good, but it felt like a overextended movie, basically, which is kind of where it drops down for me.
Right.
And then sadly, Book of Boba Fett's probably at the bottom of the ones we've gotten so far.
Okay.
Although I do want to throw in a nod. I've only seen season 1 of The Bad Batch, and if we were including that in this, it would probably be somewhere between Obi-Wan and Mando season 2.
Okay, I think that's pretty fair for Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my list looks almost exactly like yours, except I think maybe Andor would be number one. I think Andor is some of the best Star Wars ever created. I think it's like on par with like the excellence of like A New Hope. Like I think it's that good. And which I guess makes sense because Rogue One's like my second favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
So I think for me, I would probably it would be like Andor, season 1 of Mandalorian. For same thing, I had no expectations, right? And then season 2, and then probably Bad Batch, and then Obi-Wan. I feel like Obi-Wan, the same problem you said. It felt like a movie, right? It felt like they wrote a 2-hour movie, and then they realized they needed like an extra 4 hours of filler.
Yep.
And they were like, "Oh, he can do this, and he can do this," and you're like, "This isn't a compelling like parts." But the parts between the action weren't compelling,
Yep, completely.
And so, and then I would put, unfortunately, Book of Boba Fett at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So pretty much same. So now for me, slot season 3 in. Where does it go in?
That's a great question. So for me, it probably goes just above Obi-Wan.
Okay.
So don't let the ranking fool you. It doesn't mean I didn't care for it. It's just there's a lot of other good stuff up above it that it just doesn't hit the same way as the other ones. For me personally, I think it's definitely better than Obi-Wan because it feels like it's a complete story. It justified for me the length of the season, having 8 episodes. It had plenty of stuff for the 8 episodes. But I think that and I'll talk about it later on when I talk about my overall thoughts of the season. But for me, it unfortunately suffered from what I believe to be some behind the scenes stuff that kind of hampered it a little bit.
Okay.
And so it was doing a lot of catch up for other stuff that probably should have been done before it aired. And so it didn't have as strong of a narrative like hook as the rest of the other two seasons did, or even Bad Batch, if I'm being honest.
Okay. And then so Jen had asked, would you include any of the animated series in your ranking? For me, I think it was perfect to include Bad Batch because it's kind of I'm lumping Bad Batch in with like the
Same.
new Star Wars. Even though I know Disney did make Rebels, it feels like so long ago now.
Yeah.
And then we got the season 7 of Clone Wars, but I feel like that kind of Disney's not really responsible for that. It was already written and storyboarded for the most part. So that's why I didn't want to include those. So I think you were right on the money, like including Bad Batch, because it's like new, right?
Yeah, completely.
And if you guys are watching Bad Batch and we know where the sequel trilogy went, the cloning. So if you're watching Bad Batch, you're watching Mandalorian, everything's kind of building towards that. So they have a lot in common, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, I think they're almost like it almost feels like they're trying to, in a weird way, set up the sequel movies with these two shows.
Which I have some notes about this, and we can just talk about it now. People on Reddit, like I spend a lot of time on Reddit and Facebook, and they're very Star Wars fans are the worst fans in the world, I think, right? Like we love our Star Wars, and I fall into that trap too. I'm not a big sequel fan at all. I'm not a big fan of 7, 8, and 9. But people are saying, "Oh, Mandalorian, they're going to use that to rewrite or to fix things that are wrong with the sequels," and that's why it's wrong. And it's like, well, they also made the Clone War cartoon animated show to fix the prequels, and it fixes the prequels, honestly.
I think, to be perfect, I mean, if we're being fair, a big part of the reason why the prequels kind of had that second look where people now genuinely enjoy them and like them is because there was a lot of that Clone War stuff to kind of come in and fill in some of the gaps that were there. 100%. And so it kind of bleeds into it. And so if you watch them together, it really feels like a complete story at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And so Val's here. She said, I'm just here to learn about the show. I'm like 5,000 movies shows behind. And it looks like somebody in chat, it looks like it was Jen, did warn that you would get spoilers. So yes, this is full spoiler talk.
Yeah.
All Star Wars is on the table. So probably should have given you that warning before I dropped some Bad Batch spoilers. But, sorry. But also I want to say hi to Rachel. She's here as well. Jen, your wife, great taste, obviously. Book of Boba Fett at the bottom, and we can talk more about that later too. Do you guys like that George Lucas allowed Disney to develop Star Wars movies, shows? I mean, the simple answer for me is absolutely, because I feel like I don't know if George was actually ever going to tackle 7, 8, and 9. I feel like that what Disney's done is given us a very amazing experience in the parks with Star Wars characters. Whether you love or hate Galaxy's Edge, I think it's still very successful. I think that, yes, we got the sequels, which weren't amazing, but, neither were the prequels in the first few viewings. But we also got Andor. We also got Mandalorian. We also got Bad Batch. We also got Rebels. Like, we got a lot of good stuff since Disney's taken over. So I think, for me, I'm still glad he sold it, because and I know maybe this is a weird way to say it, but I'd rather have okay Star Wars than no Star Wars.
Agreed.
If that makes sense.
Like, for me, just I'm going to really age myself here. I grew up in a time where we didn't get anything new Star Wars for like 5 years. And the first new Star Wars things we got were the books, which was the Thrawn trilogy. So, and that was it. There was no movies, no new TV shows, nothing. It was just books. And so you kind of had to settle for, until they made the prequels, basically about like 10 years almost of just books.
Right. I have a garage full of now what they call expanded universe books, the Thrawn books, the Jedi series, the Yuuzhan Vong invasion series. I have hundreds of Star Wars books. But that's all we had. You're right. Yeah. We had to use our imagination.
Yeah. And I think I am very happy by the abundance of it, especially, I mean, even into video games. I think like the Jedi Survivor games, like, those are great games. I mean, in and of, besides being Star Wars games, those are just good games. I think there's been more positive coming from the sale than anything that I would say as a sum total negative. There are individual things I don't care for,
Right.
but I think if you were to total that all up, it's a net positive for me.
Agreed. Willow says, "Think Mandalorian will arrive in the new movies." You know that's pretty hard to tell. Mandalorian takes place very close after Return of the Jedi, so for him to show up in that era, plus now that they're going to be skipping ahead like 15 years for the next official Star Wars movie, I'm not sure if Mando will show up, but I do think Grogu may.
I think that's almost a guarantee, just
Like,
because you're going to want to. I mean, he is one of the very few things that the vast majority of Star Wars fans kind of agree on.
yeah,
And so, and I think it's a lock to bring in people who may be unsure about Star Wars
right.
in and of itself. I mean, you have people that are they just love Grogu just in general, and so they'll just go see him if he's in the movie. So
Right.
I think
He bridges that gap, I think, between like your hardcore Star Wars fan and their wife.
Yeah.
Or their kid who has no interest, or their friends with no interest.
Or their
right?
mom.
Or their mom, yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think
No.
Star Wars has always kind of had characters that do that, but maybe not as successfully as Grogu.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where the Ewoks were supposed to take the place of if you go that far back. And I think that, and I do think that they are building up Grogu to be like a major portion of the universe going forward.
I think so too. I do think so too. So I wanted to, I wish they would go back in time before episode 1 to develop Emperor Palpatine, Qui-Gon. You know, I do think that would be some great stuff to see. I would love to see that in like an animated form, especially. Mm-hmm. That way we don't have to deal with like de-aging anybody. I think those would make some great like one-off arcs of animation personally.
If you're interested in that, on Disney Plus, there's a show called Tales of the Jedi, and it goes into not necessarily Palpatine or Qui-Gon, but it does go into Count Dooku and Ahsoka's history.
I saw that.
Yeah, and they do touch on Palpatine, kind of where he came from as part of the Dooku stuff. Mm-hmm. And I will say I would recommend it because it really puts a new spin on what you think Dooku was trying to do. And I think it feels like in this current generation of Star Wars, there's kind of a rethinking of what the Jedi were actually about towards the end before the Empire took them out. And I think it shows you kind of what it feels like the thought process, at least at Lucasfilm, of some of the inherent problems of the Jedi Order before everything got destroyed. And it maybe kind of inform a little bit about where they may want to go in the future.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Marty has a very tough ask here. This is something I thought about messaging and trying to do, but can you guys rank the Star Wars movies, then rank the shows and the movies together? Really curious. I think that is a great question. It's a hard ask. It's tough. I can probably do it pretty easily, I think, though, if I don't try to overthink it. So I'm gonna try to go through and hopefully I don't miss a movie. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to start with A New Hope because it built everything.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry. I'm not going to start with A New Hope. I take that right. I messed up right off the bat. Empire Strikes Back right off the top. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to go with, this is actually pretty tough. Empire, Rogue One, A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi. And then I think my TV show rankings come in.
Where would you put Solo in there?
Oh, dang. Okay, so Solo would slot in after Mandalorian. So
okay.
Return of the Jedi, Mando season 1, season 2, Solo, and then then the rest kind of trickle in. All I can say for sure, I think the bottom would switch around pretty easily for me, but I think my very least favorite movie is probably Rise of Skywalker, and then Phantom Menace. Like those are solidly my bottoms, and then depending on the mood I'm in, it's probably Last Jedi, right? Mm-hmm. And then Attack of the Clones, and then Force Awakens probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. It's a tough list, though.
It is because it's a lot to try and. I mean, it's like asking to rank all of the Marvel movies. It just takes a while, and you're afraid you're going to miss something.
Yeah, it takes a lot. And that's without even getting into the cartoons. Like
Yeah.
I didn't throw the animated stuff in there, but Clone Wars and Rebels would be pretty high for me.
Mhm.
Clone Wars is probably like my third favorite media of all time, like the animated series.
Let's see. So for me, Empire. I'm just gonna do the movies because I'm afraid I would mess up if I tried to do the shows. So for the movies, it goes Empire because I'm basic. It would go Rogue One, just like you. For me, I would actually probably put in, and this is an honest opinion. I would actually probably put in Force Awakens because I really liked Force Awakens quite a bit.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Then New Hope. Then let's see, Return of the Jedi, Solo, and this is where it gets controversial: Rise of Skywalker, and then Last Jedi.
Okay.
Like definitively, Last Jedi is my least favorite.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a good order. Last Jedi is to me is very bad, but
yeah, it's the Luke thing. I just can't get over it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that like really hinders it for me. Other than that, I mean, there's some stuff in there that I think, yeah, that's a whole other like show.
That's a whole other show. I will say, and I don't want to get into just bashing the sequels. There are sequences I like a lot from those movies, and one thing I want to call out is a lot of YouTuber personalities, a lot of Star Wars fans. I see it on TikTok all the time. Is they use like that sound? How did this become this or whatever, right? And they show like the amazing Jedi moves that even Luke is doing, which honestly not very amazing compared to what they were doing in the prequels, right? The height of the Jedi, basically. And then they show like the terrible, or what they're calling terrible lightsaber fights of like, think of like Kylo and Rey on the Death Star.
That's not even like accurate.
And I personally love how Kylo has zero like form, and he's just like, I'm just gonna brute strength this. Like that's so like that's one of the actual things I feel like is dark side about Kylo is he like lacks the charisma and form of like lightsaber fighting, so he's just like swinging a broadsword, dude. Like he's gonna overpower you, not outskill you, you know?
Yeah, like in the same vein, I mentioned that like Last Jedi was my least favorite movie, but one of my second favorite Star Wars lightsaber scene of all time is in Last Jedi, and that's when they're fighting in the throne room, both Rey and Kylo in the throne room against the guards. Like that to me is like top tier, like second best lightsaber scene ever.
It's a great fight scene. It's a great scene. Let's see. Jen said, I'd rather have a Star Wars that's not specifically for me than no Star Wars. Love that it's opening the world up to a new generation. 100%. 100%. Would you like George Lucas to still be involved? I really love the prequels. I wouldn't mind if he had some involvement, but I don't want any new creator to come in and be married to ideas that Lucas has. Like, I don't want them to have to like write only what he wants and like pigeonhole ideas in, but I wouldn't mind if he was consulted since he did create the universe.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't think George had the grand plan that he's credited with having. I think he threw some stuff at the wall and it came together and he was able to put something really awesome together with the help of a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, no matter what like the source is, I mean, you look at like Marvel movies, Feige's claim to have this grand plan for everything, but then you watch them in order and you see the holes. I mean, there's nobody who like can say that they have like everything figured out start to finish and then have it executed exactly the way that they said it was going to. There's always going to be some stuff in there. And I think honestly, for Star Wars, Dave Filoni does a good job of pulling from the best of what he learned from George Lucas and then trying to mesh it and open it up so it doesn't feel like you had to have, this years of Star Wars knowledge to watch a new show or anything.
Agreed. I do totally agree with that. Willow asks, are those original Action Comics behind you, Dave?
I appreciate you think I'm that wealthy, but no. They are 10 reproductions of Superman #1. Well, let's see this way. Yeah. Superman #1, Detective Comics 27, first appearance of Batman, and then Action Comics #1.
That's awesome. Yeah. Marty said, thanks for giving your rankings, made my night. Thanks for putting us on the spot, Marty. It made us really think. It was a great question. And then Judy's here as well. What's up, Judy?
Hey, Judy.
And my buddy Dakota's here. What's up?
Hey.
Dakota is a huge Star Wars fan. Also owns more Star Wars Legos than anybody I know.
That's awesome.
And he'll probably text me right now because I used Legos as a plural, like a noob. It's already a plural. So I'm going to have to hear about that, I'm sure. But he has a ton of Star Wars knowledge, so it's great to have him in the chat too. I guess let's kick it off. Like, break down your overall thoughts of season 3 for me. Like, like, are you happy with where it went? Stuff like that. Just break it down.
I think that season 3, there was a video that I watched that I thought was actually very informative. And it was talking about how season 3 of Mandalorian ended with a circular wipe. So basically it was a circle and then it kind of closed and it went to black. And that type of wipe is only used 3 times in all of Star Wars. The first time was at the end of New Hope. The second time was at the end of Force Awakens, and then here in Mando. And what it typically signifies in Star Wars is that that's the end of the first act, like the end of the beginning, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think that looking at Mando season 3 as like the end of the beginning of this part of like this section of Star Wars, I think it makes it solid for me. And I think it did a good job of basically wrapping up kind of the stuff that was leading up to it. Everything from Mando season 1, season 2, and Book of Boba Fett, just kind of wrapping all that up and basically, okay, we've gotten Mando to the place where we want him to be, and then we're going to go forward with this new type of adventure in the next seasons going forward. And so I think looking at it as like the third film, so to speak, in it, I think it did a good job. My overall, if I were to give it like a grade, it's probably a solid B- for me. There are a few things in there that I probably would change, but like I said, I think that there's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff that they had to mess with to make this work. And I think that you can kind of see where they were fixing some things as they were kind of writing the show.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on a lot of that. I think solid B- is a great, it's not a C-level like show or anything. It did a really good job. I feel like there were maybe some pacing issues or maybe some tone issues where like the tone switched a lot between episodes, and I feel like that worked really well in Mando season 1, which had more of like a standalone episode where like there was a loose arc that wasn't tied up to the end, that you're like, okay, they're definitely building something there. And that's what like I used to be a really big Doctor Who fan, and the Doctor Who show was really good about that. Like lots of the episodes were standalone serial style Saturday morning cartoons, right? Yeah. And then every few episodes they tie in a big thing that then ended in the season finale, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Mando season 1 did that really well, but you could tell right away there was this giant overarching plot, and I'm okay with that, but I felt like maybe the tones shifted between episodes a little too much, and which kind of leads to the next thing. One of my favorite episodes was actually one of the episodes that had the largest tone shift. And that's the episode where Lizzo and Jack Black showed up as well.
Oh, that's funny. Lloyd. Okay.
And so I loved that episode. Well, I do enjoy Lizzo. I enjoy Jack Black, and Christopher Lloyd. I'm always down to have him around. But that's the first time in live action I felt like I was watching a Clone Wars episode.
Yes, 100%.
And that's for better or worse. It's not necessarily a good thing. It was super goofy. I didn't know I needed to see a super battle droid running around full speed, right? But I still loved it. But I know a lot of people wish they would have. They're calling them cameos. They played actual characters, so I'm not calling it a cameo. But they didn't like the placements of those actors necessarily. Did that take you out of Star Wars?
That's funny you should ask that, because I hadn't seen it because I was on vacation. And actually the only time I knew that there was like any kind of cameos was when I was talking to you in Disneyland that one night, late at night. And somebody at the table mentioned, oh yeah, these people were there, and you asked them, you didn't say who they were, but you asked them, did they take you out of it? So I knew kind of going into the episode, watching it like almost a week later, that there's something in this that takes people out. So it kind of took the sting, so to speak, out of it. It wasn't I was kind of braced for it. So for me, it wasn't as big a shock. It did 100% feel like a Clone Wars episode, like the most Clone Wars episode, I think.
Right.
And it it actually made it harder for me. I think, well, part of my problem was I had just seen the Mario movie before. So Jack Black was King Bowser for me. And I kept hearing the Peaches song in the back of my head when I was watching it. So
He's
that
like,
also kind of
Mando.
exactly. So it did, but not in a way where, you know, I was like, okay, this show jumped the shark. I can't do it anymore.
Okay.
I think it reminded me, I don't know if you watched Game of Thrones, but during one season of Game of Thrones, they had Ed Sheeran in the show.
Yeah.
And that actively took me out of the show because I wasn't prepared for it. And I think it in this case, at least they tried to have them play characters, but I do think that unfortunately it was too much stunt casting in one episode. It was, I'm comparing it in my head. I have a very specific show I'm comparing it to. I'm comparing it to She-Hulk in the show where they had Megan Thee Stallion on. Yeah. And like every 5 minutes, it was like they were mentioning Megan Thee Stallion. And so at least in the episode, they weren't mentioning, you know, it's Lizzo or Jack Black like every couple of minutes. So that helped.
Right.
But I think it did take me out, but not enough to ruin the season for me.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. I enjoyed the cameos. I do wish they were maybe, or I'm just going to call them cameos for lack of a better term. Yeah. But I do wish they were spread out more in the season rather than they just like it's like they had budget for 3 and they were like, let's just get it over with. It's easier, or, you know.
Well, it was funny too, because like in one of the earlier episodes, Tim Meadows was in there, and having watched SNL for like so long, it was like, oh, hey, he's in here. And so it felt, it did. I do agree with you that if they had spread them out, it probably wouldn't have been as noticeable, but to pack them all in, it felt like back in the old days when it was like sweeps and they're trying to pop like ratings for that week.
100%. You
know what I mean?
It was like the mid-season finale where they need everybody to tune in, right?
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. Real quick, we got Pumpkin here, says, hey, Park fam, what's up? And then we got Walters here as well. And it looks like Jace jumped in. He said it was good that they did all the cameos in the same episode. That way it impacted less of the season. I mean, from that case, if getting Lizzo and Jack Black in any character form was going to bring you out, then I guess it's probably better it was the same, like the exact same time, like just pull the trigger, you know?
Yeah, completely. At least that way if you don't like it, you can just skip that episode when you rewatch or whatever.
Jen said it wasn't Ed Sheeran in Game of Thrones for us when we saw them.
Yeah.
Since you guys were kind of prepared, right?
Yeah.
So for me, my overall for season 3 is I think it was a great, fun season. I think that it had some, like I said, some tone problems, some pacing problems, and I feel like they did some weird story stuff, and I feel like we'll probably touch on it later. But like, I feel like there was just some odd choices that maybe would have made more sense, like had they just cut out or done in different ways.
Completely.
Walter asked, which Star Wars character would you most like to have dinner with and planning to do Galactic Cruiser together with?
Oh, I have an easy one right off the top. It's Lando. Lando would be amazing to like hang out with.
That's
that guy's like a fun time.
That's a great choice. I'm not going to pick your choice because now I wish I would have thought of that, but he's not who popped into my head first. I would actually, it sounds terrible, but I actually think I would, I think I would do it with Anakin. Like, I think I would have dinner with Anakin.
Like, which Anakin are we talking about? Are you like
not pod racing annoying child Anakin, like Clone Wars Anakin, like
mentor to Ahsoka,
like peak Anakin season 7, like before he falls.
Got it.
I think it would be Anakin. Yeah, I think I would go with Anakin. I think it would just be interesting to like. You'd be able to hang out with a Jedi, but I feel like he'd still like let you like he'd be fun to hang out with, but he'd still use his force powers to like get you in the club for free.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He'd use his lightsaber to like cut dessert or something. Like Obi-Wan wouldn't do any of that. You know what I mean? No. He might even let you take a swing at a couple things with his lightsaber, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could be an interesting, as long as it wasn't like a beach dinner, because we know that would put him in a bad mood.
Yeah, because he hates sand.
Because he hates the sand. So, but if we got a Galactic Cruiser, like I'm taking the bed, he's taking the bunk. You know what I'm saying? So
that's what I'm saying.
You went with Lando. Lando rented your whole Galactic Cruiser out. So
exactly. I mean, there'd be shenanigans galore. I think the only thing you'd have to worry about is there is a 50-50 chance you'll end up like in the brig by the end of the night. So you just kind of keep that in mind.
100%. Crystal had to say he would let you touch his saber. I tried to word that as properly as I could because I knew somebody in the comments was going to say something like that. So it just figures it would be my wife. Greg said, whatever happened to sweeps? I don't know. I think they just kind of, it's just one of those things that as TV moved more to like digital and streaming, it's not as needed, I think.
Yeah, nobody watches. There's no seasons anymore of anything. It's just whenever like a show drops, and then everybody just kind of watches all at once.
Yeah, and just to even talk on that, like Chris and I have been trying to watch Supernatural because so many people like recommended it, but oh my god, there's like 18 seasons and they're all 24 episodes long.
Yeah, Jen just finished it earlier this year. It's like her favorite show of all time. She cried at the end. She was like all about it. So
I mean, we love it, but like it's a lot of show to watch.
It is a lot of show. I just watched the season finale and just like that was it.
Have people thought Q was Pedro Pascal before? It looks just like him.
I wish, because I could probably get into a lot more places that way, but
right.
No.
I could see it though. I could see it.
Well, thank you. No, not like even once, not even close. I bet you Jen's laughing in the living room right now hearing that.
Probably. I don't need another reason to cry. So let's talk about, we talked about our overall thoughts. Let's talk about what was your favorite thing about the season?
For me, my favorite thing about the season was honestly the stuff. I think it's actually probably the stuff that a lot of people didn't care for. It was all the stuff on Coruscant. That's like one thing I think that was a big, heavy part of the expanded universe, the books, that you and I grew up with, but never has really been touched in any of like the shows or anything. I mean, even in the new movies, they had already moved the capital off of Coruscant. It didn't really even get mentioned anymore or at any point. And so it's fascinating to see basically what happened right after the Empire fell and kind of where things were. Like I mentioned before, the Thrawn books were where I started reading, and especially that first book was really heavily set up on like, this is what happened 5 years after the Empire falls. This is what's going on. This is what they're doing. This is how it works. And so to see some of that is interesting to me because it's like this radical like shift in like government and everything. And to see it go from, this one type of bureaucracy to another, I think is like, it's just interesting to me from like a political perspective. So I actually really, really enjoyed all of the Coruscant stuff this season.
Yeah, I think the Coruscant stuff could almost be its own show, right? Like, I don't know what they would call it or what it would focus around, but I feel like I definitely want to see more of it in the same way that seeing that side of like the ISB and Andor was super interesting to me.
Yeah, this is kind of where I was talking to like some of the behind the scenes stuff kind of got in the way. Before the new, there was supposed to be a Rangers of the New Republic show before the star of it was like fired, basically.
Right.
And so that I think a lot of the stuff that was in this show was probably pulled. A lot of the Coruscant type stuff that was kind of pulled from whatever they had planned for that Rangers of the New Republic show.
Right.
And so I think I think that they probably will go back to it at some point. I don't, who knows when now.
I actually, that's just so people know. So there was supposed to be a Rangers of the New Republic. It was going to star Gina. Is it Gina Carano?
Carano, yeah.
Carano, yeah. So obviously, she did or said some things that wasn't good with Disney. Disney let her go, right? So that's why she didn't show back up. But I really think that they are reworking a lot of the ideas of that. And I do think that the way Mandalorian season 3 ends is we're basically getting that Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be with Din, with the Mandalorian and Grogu kind of acting as that point person. And I think that, I don't remember the character's name, but the X-Wing pilots, I think that we're going to see them like interact way more. I don't think that was an accident, I
don't think so either. Yeah, I think completely it was supposed to be done on purpose. I think it does feel like they ended it with a definitive, this is what we're going to be doing next season, or this is where we're going. Right. And so it felt like it was nice that you can tell that whatever stuff happened that they had to kind of fix to kind of get to them to this point, they're
Yeah,
at the point that they wanted to get to, and now they're able to kind of move forward,
agreed.
and go where they want to go.
Agreed. And Greg said, "Sorry, my second question was kind of confusing. Meant, are you and Dave planning to do a Galactic Star Cruiser together?" We've never discussed that.
No,
There are few people I would want to do that experience with, and I do think going the same time as Dave would be like a lot of fun.
I would go with you. I wouldn't plan it for myself because Nick knows this. I struggle badly with talking to characters. So the idea of spending 2 days improving with them sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah,
So while I would want to do all the stuff, I just wouldn't want to talk to anybody. And so I don't know if I'd be getting my money's worth doing it.
right. I'd be like, "This is my companion, Dave. He doesn't speak."
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He got force choked by Maul, back in the day for some spice, and he doesn't speak anymore. So it would be fun, though. It would be
It
fun.
would.
I just wish it wasn't so expensive. So that was your favorite thing of the season, then?
Yeah, it was the Coruscant stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. I do think that was a lot of people's least favorite parts, but I also, like I said, I really enjoyed that, though. You know me pretty well, so I am a Mandalorian history fan, and I love the lore behind the Mandalorians. I always have. So I think just to see Mandalore again that we haven't seen since the Clone Wars, to see I cannot tell you. We're all pretty much adults here, so I'll say it. When the scene of all of the Mandos dropping with the jetpacks happened, Crystal looked at me and was like, "How hard are you right now?" Verbatim, all right? Just because she knows how much I love Mandalorians. I love the Mandalorian dropship is one of my favorite Star Wars ships of all time. So it's there's pure amazingness, and
Yeah.
I think that Marvel has proven sometimes it's hard to do aerial fights.
Yeah.
And I think the Mandalorian in that last episode, they nailed it.
Yeah, completely.
Jetpack usage, the usage of the way they use the packs in general to throw kicks and punches even in the air. I just thought they did a killer job on that. So I think just all the Mandalorian mythos, I was just a huge fan of.
Yeah, there was a lot of good Mandalorian stuff in the Clone Wars, and then some of it in Rebels with Sabine and some of her storylines and stuff. So
Right.
Filoni probably had a pretty good idea of how to help them direct it so it didn't, because like you mentioned, Marvel struggles with it because sometimes it's either too many cuts or not enough cuts, and so
Right.
It showed just enough of the action so you kind of knew what was happening, but not so much that you noticed that oh, well, that person may be a little too CGI or whatever.
Right. And I think it probably really did help that, in Marvel, some of the characters that fly and move around or swing, they don't necessarily look unhuman, right? So we can tell when they're heavily CGI'd. Even Vision looks very humanoid, right? So when he just looks a little off, but in this we have, basically stormtroopers in kind of quasi Mando armor.
Yeah.
And Mandalorian. So everybody's covered. There's just humanoid shape, not so much feature. So I think that helped,
That's true. I mean, it's going back to Marvel, it's why Iron Man's flying stuff looks the best typically, because it's just a suit.
Yeah, agreed. And then so Crystal with the faces. Would love to see Crystal's reaction right now. Yeah. Like I said, we're all mostly adults here, hopefully, but obviously, she knows that I love that stuff. So it's just for her to even get that, I was like, dang, you're right, We had a couple of stuff up here. Crystal said she'll come with us just for the character interaction. Crystal would be great with the character.
Crystal is great with characters, so yeah.
Yeah, she would be great. Jake said making Silent Dave. I like it. We got some Halloween costumes one year, maybe. How come Book of Boba is low on a lot of people's list? I really liked it. Yeah, I mean, I'm down to talk about it real quick. For me, I actually loved the idea of Book of Boba Fett. I loved the idea of seeing, I love Boba. I'm a big Boba Fett fan. But I thought, he shows up in it was the end of season 1, right? No, he shows up in season 2.
Season 2.
Season 2. The end credits or whatever shows him basically cold blood kill the dude in the Hutt cartel to take it over. And then, so you're like, oh, he's going to be a crime lord. I'm down for this. And then you watch the show and he's like, I'm not going to be a crime lord. And it's like, you just murdered some dude like on screen for us. And then you're having like a big change of heart, which I would be okay with, but I think he should have got to that change of heart mid-show or end of show.
Right.
That makes sense. I think the working with the locals and all of that, and honestly, they could have cut all that out and just showed his time basically from when he got out of the Sarlacc pit up until he went and found his armor with Mando. Like that would have been a good enough show for me because I enjoyed the flashback stuff of him working with the Tusken Raiders because the Tusken Raiders aren't like a race in Star Wars that we get a lot of time with.
Mm-hmm.
They're always just the boogeyman, you know?
Right.
So
I think if I were to say why it ranks low is I think kind of the similar reason why some people didn't care for this season of Mandalorian. I think it's a problem of expectation. I think that they're coming out of season 2 of Mandalorian, both with Mando and with Boba, it ended with them in a very specific place. And so you were kind of expecting them to kind of go with them in a certain direction. And in both cases, actually in the Book of Boba Fett, the show itself, they ended up in a very, very different spot than where you were at in season 2. And it didn't feel like, because it almost felt like they combined part of a season of Mandalorian with Book of Boba Fett,
right,
that they didn't really give enough time to really develop either one totally. Right. And so they both ended up in a very different spot, but it didn't feel like it was earned. It almost felt like they just kind of needed they needed Mando to be back with Grogu, trying to restore his honor. They needed Boba to be running the gangs on Tatooine and being that crime lord or that boss of Tatooine or whatever, but they didn't do enough to kind of set up over the course of the season to get them to that point. So by squishing them both into one season, it was jarring, and I think people were expecting something much different at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then you throw in some of like the really weird stuff too, like the Gen Z biker gang with all the cybernetic implants, who like I actually don't have a problem with. They feel very out of place on like remote outskirts Tatooine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they also feel very Clone Warsy, and so I think that
in a bad way though.
Yeah,
like, in like a Jar Jar only episode of Clone Wars, you know?
Yeah. I think if I were to sum it up, I think people were expecting a tone much more similar to Andor for Book of Boba Fett, and it was much closer to like an Obi-Wan or a Bad Batch type of show, and so I think it people just were not getting what they were hoping for from it.
Yeah. Overall, though, I will say if they greenlit another Boba Fett season, like I'm in. Mm-hmm. Like I would just hope that they learn that like we watched Book of Boba Fett for Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind if Mando shows up for an episode, but I didn't need the last half of that season or the last third of that season to be Mandalorian season 2.5. Like I wanted Book of Boba, you know?
And honestly, if they had taken those episodes from Book of Boba that were Mando focused and put them in season 3 of this season, I think for a lot of people it would have raised the level of the season because it would have felt much more focused on what they wanted from the Mandalorian. And so I think they did themselves a disservice by kind of combining everything into that one show.
Yeah, I do think that I think they should have left Tatooine completely with Book of Boba. I think it would have been a stronger show. And I think they should have put like Boba back on. I know they don't call the ship Slave One anymore, but that's what the ship's called. They put him back on his original ship, like show him get it back. And like, let's get him and Finnick doing some bounty hunting, right?
Yeah.
That was some of the best parts of, like, let's be honest. We're introduced to him in Empire as the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, right? As one of the top bounty hunters. And all we ever really see him do is get Han Solo. But he didn't even really do that. Vader did all the hard work. He just showed up.
Yeah.
So it's like, show us him be a badass bounty hunter for a while, and you can have him wrestle with who is he now? Like, who has he become? and you can still utilize those flashbacks with him on Tatooine learning to be, a better, or to be who he is now with the Tusken Raiders. But like, we don't need to be on Tatooine, I didn't think,
Completely.
I feel like it would have been a better show. So Willow said, I was a big Boba Fett fan since the original movies, and it was the first Disney Plus show I watched. Okay. He said he couldn't get into The Mandalorian. Let's see. If you were master of the Force, who would you love to lightsaber duel for the biggest challenge?
Well, for the biggest challenge would probably be I'm doing it like fighter rankings in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you have one guy, and if he beats another guy, then he's the best, so on and so forth.
Right.
So it would either be Obi-Wan or Luke.
Okay.
Because a lot of people consider like Darth Vader to be like the top tier of like lightsaber fighters.
Yeah.
And like Obi-Wan beat him twice. I mean, just hands down beat him twice.
Right.
2-0 against Vader. So that to me makes he's the best. And then Luke, like, did the same thing. And we've never seen him lose a lightsaber fight in any of the movies. I mean, he may have.
That's true.
So like, as far as the movies go, Luke's undefeated. So
I would argue he pretty solidly lost in Return of the Jedi. Like but he didn't lose the lightsaber fight. So I guess you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He didn't lose the fight. He lost to Sidious. So you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. That I think that's pretty good. I think my choice would probably be Prime Anakin or Ahsoka, and only not because she's necessarily the most skilled, though she is highly skilled.
Right.
I think the dual saber combat would be very challenging.
That's a good point.
Because I would probably not dual wield, so I think that would be my thing. Like Prime Anakin. So
yeah.
Do you guys think the Mandalorian of the title is Din Djarin, or is it referring to someone else? I think Grogu's the Mandalorian.
I think it's funny that Jen asked that, because that's something that Jen and I like talk about all the time. That's like an insight into like the spicy conversations she and I have. We talk about it from the idea of that. I do think that the original concept for the show was Mandalorian. The Mandalorian was supposed to be an anthology about Mandalorians.
Yes,
which is why I think Book of Boba Fett was technically supposed to be Mandalorian season 3, but then Din got too popular, and so they split it off into its own thing.
Right.
And then that's why, like, in season 3, it's technically Bo. And so I think the final Mandalorian, if you're so to speak, will be Grogu.
Right.
And I think it's kind of building towards him being the final one. But I do think that I personally see it as like, and maybe this is why I enjoyed this third season so much, I see it as a title of this show is about Mandalorians as opposed to a guy, Din, in himself.
100% agree. And I think when you look at it that way, the show is more enjoyable, because you're not like, man, they just sidelined. No time watching season 3 was I like, man, they sidelined the main character for Bo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very clear that the overall story is, what does it mean to be Mandalorian, right? And in the first season, we learn this is what it means to be Mandalorian. But then you kind of find out, well, like in season 2, like Homeboy's kind of with a cult.
Yeah, basically.
Like those of us that watched Rebels and Clone Wars, like we know what Death Watch was. Like that's not what it meant to be a Mandalorian. That's what it meant to be a version of a Mandalorian, right? So then Bo and her team come in, and you're like, okay, that's more still pretty right-wing Mandalorian compared to like her sister, but like much less right-wing than the Death Cult, than Death Watch. So I agree. I think it's a much better show when you look at it that way. And I've never thought that maybe Book of Boba should have been Mandalorian season 3, but I think you're probably right.
It makes more sense why they would have like, Dan in there and all that other stuff.
It does. Kevin Theme Park Adventure jumped in and said, hey, what's up? Pumpkin said Crystal is so good with character interactions. She really is.
Yeah, one of the best for sure.
Willow said, okay, I agree with everything Nick said about Boba Fett. Him as an anti-hero, I think would have been better. It really would have been, and let him like learn by the end, I think, treat him like a real Like we've never gotten a real look at like what it means to be that anti-hero, except for like the first 2-ish acts of A New Hope, maybe, where like Han was an anti-hero, kind of roguish. But I would like it to last a little longer. Like I feel like that's one thing that Star Wars doesn't always nail is like characters are inherently good or inherently bad.
Yep.
And you know, you could argue, well, it doesn't necessarily take place in our galaxy, so like they don't necessarily have the same rules, so maybe everything is black and white. But I would like to see a little bit more gray with characters sometimes.
I think that's what they were trying to do with Andor, is introduce a lot more of that gray. Because, you know, like Mon Mothma is considered like this, you know, the leader of the rebellion, this like, you know, virtuous person who's fighting against the Empire. And in that show, I mean, she does quite a few shady things in there that make you question that, you know what I mean? So I do think that they're trying in certain areas to go more gray. Whether that extends out, I don't know. But I think for me, there's certain characters do work best in black and white. Like I think Jedi inherently work best in black and white.
Absolutely.
Work best in black and white. And I think that does leave space for like people like Boba Fett to be more in that gray area.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of the idea of gray Jedi. You know, I know it's something that came up a lot in like the Expand universe, you know?
Yeah.
I'd be okay with like, I do wish that Star Wars, like, I wish we could get away from everybody being like a Sith, you know?
Sure.
Like, they don't just, I would like to see more like fallen Jedi, right? Like before they're completely corrupted, when they're just like disenfranchised. Like I'm hoping we see more of that in the future. And I wish that's what we would have gotten with Kylo more rather than, you know, him falling with Snoke. And I would have rather see that, you know?
You know, it's funny too, because I actually would also want to see the other way, where a person who was formerly following the dark side, but now trying to go back to the light. And like, I wish they would have done that with Kylo. He's the one person I think that like I would have liked for them to have kept Ben Solo alive.
100%.
I think he was one of like the most fascinating characters from the sequels. Yeah. And I would be all in on a Ben Solo movie, like easily.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on that as well. If I had a chance to write the movies, I would have made him more like less all in on the evil and more like a fallen Jedi that like quit Luke's academy and he's like struggling to figure out who he is, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe not fully tempted by the dark side, but seduced by everything that's easy that comes with it, you know? Yep. But I would have loved to see him give in the movies we did get. I would have loved by the second movie, he's fully in. He's evil. He's committed.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, through those interactions, he learns to try to come back from it by the end. And then the next sequels can touch on him. You know, how does he redeem himself? How do you even do that? You know?
Yeah. How do you live with your reputation as this evil person and trying to show that you're trying to do right? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I think that's fascinating. And you know, they could have, if they would have left him in his helmet more often, you wouldn't even have a hard story to write around how people could just forgive him. Yeah.
Like nobody would know who he was. He didn't live in that suit because of an injury, not like Vader. You know what I mean?
Completely.
So, because there was a comic line where where Luke did turn him back to the good side, and then they painted Vader's suit white.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, it was like
it's
like a what if kind of.
Yeah, like one of the what ifs, but it was pretty ridiculous. So, Marty said Jon Favreau said he would love to do at least 10 seasons of The Mandalorian. That's a lot of seasons. But you know, I think as a continued anthology story, it could work, right? And I guess that brings us to like, what do you want to see going forward? Like, we know, or we're pretty sure that season 4 of Mandalorian is going to be kind of more like, you know, where he's working with the New Republic. You know, more standalones. Maybe we're going to get less Mandalorian drama as far as like them reclaiming Mandalore. So it's like, where do they go from there? Does Bo get her own series now?
Yeah. I think for me, for just Mando and Grogu, I think what I would like to do, I'd like to see moving forward is almost a kind of a return back to what we thought we were going to get in what most people thought we were going to get in season 1, of that lone wolf and cub type situation where it's basically this guy and his kid taking on like evil in the universe, basically. And it would be cool to be able to see, we saw that council of Imperial warlords at the end of this season, or towards the end of the season. I think it would be cool to kind of go to some of those worlds, not liberate them because that's not his bag, but just, almost like these little like hit and run missions of taking out one or two like important people in these areas, just so you can kind of see. It's a good excuse to see more of the galaxy and see other places, or even return to places like what does Naboo look like right now? You know what I mean? Like you could even go back to some of these places that you've seen in other spots and see how they're dealing with like the aftermath, like Cloud City was an Imperial stronghold at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Empire's gone. Did Lando go back there? You know what I mean? Like what there's all these other things you could do. You could use Mando to kind of like explore and figure out. And, there's a lot of Empire out there to kind of take on.
Yeah. And it's funny. I thought the exact same thing, but if they did a standalone like Bo Mandalorian show, like I feel like they have a lot to do in their space. That obviously like there is Imperial remnant in that area.
Yeah,
and so like I love the idea of seeing them do some like hit and run like rebel guerrilla strikes on those remnants that are left. But I'd like it to see it be more like on the scale of like the Mandalorian fleet, just because I feel like they could realistically hit a small Imperial stronghold, do some damage, and still get away. Whereas it's just Mando and Grogu, right?
Right.
Which obviously he proved he could do some really good damage. One of my favorite scenes of the whole series was kind of their take on the red laser beam doors from Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was amazing, like done so well, where he just like is outnumbered each time and has to like come to terms with it. And he had no weapon for like 80% of it.
Yeah, it felt like it was there specifically to remind you how good of a fighter he is. And like why, he was like, when we meet him in the first season, he's like one of the most, prolific bounty hunters there.
Right. Because he's Din's kind of strange, right? Like he is a prolific bounty hunter.
Yeah.
He is an excellent like shot and fighter in general, but he's kind of an idiot, isn't he? Like
he's a little bit of a goober. Like
he stumbles into things kind of like hot-headedly, right?
Yeah.
And we see that on when he goes to Mandalore by himself, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too.
She won't go with him, and he's like, "I'll just go by myself then. Like, what? I don't need you." And like, he just like stumbles into that crab thing, whatever the hell that thing was doing, which they never touched on again,
Or even when like he fell, I mean, he straight up fell in the water. It's not like he was like
the Mythosaur did not pull him down. He fell.
He tripped and fell.
Yeah,
and almost drowned because he tripped and fell.
Expecting some stairs, and there were none.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I just think it's funny, but it is important that they have those scenes where he is a badass again, because he is, and it makes sense that you could be good at being a fighter, but not be the best planner, right? He kind of just wings it, So okay, cool. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. Greg said also in the Mandalorian language, aren't some plural words said without an S on the end? They are. Some people say introduce people who've never seen Star Wars to them in order from the prequels forward. That is a very popular way to introduce people to them, but I personally like to start people at 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, that's funny.
I think it tells like a better narrative.
I did it the other way with the girls, with our daughters. We started at 1 and then went 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, Solo, and then the current trilogy, or the OG trilogy. And it was funny doing it with them that way, because like when Jen mentioned earlier that they're opening up Star Wars for new people, one of the things that I thought was fascinating is our daughter Joanna. She sobbed at the end of Revenge of the Sith because she was like, all Anakin wanted was a family and no one would be his family, and then he turned away the only family he had, and she was like sobbing at the end of it, that like because of all of this stuff that people were using him and manipulating him, he's evil now. And like it really like emotionally affected her.
That's so deep. Like I don't
Yeah.
even think I ever like I you get it, but like dang, it really changes the way you think about it though, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like they were like really like invested into the story of Anakin. And so I think that there it I think going with 4, 5, 6, had I done it that way with them, it would have eliminated maybe some of the plot hole things that maybe they were questioning about.
Yeah.
But I think that what it did do is it built up because I do believe that 1 through 6 is the story of Anakin Skywalker. That's something that like I've always thought up until the sequels came out.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you look at 1 through 6 as the life story of Anakin Skywalker, you get a stronger connection with that character. And so those movies hit different because you're watching this guy with all this promise get manipulated and come back, basically.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there's like a one size fits all answer for which way you should watch them. I think both have benefits. I think, like you said, maybe you can become more attached to Anakin that way, rather than already kind of knowing that he's going to turn into Vader, and so you're not going to get emotionally attached because he's down at heart someplace he's still kind of a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
But I really love like the I'm your father pull. Like I think that no matter what, you don't see that coming. You know what I mean?
Completely.
And like Leia's his sister. Like I feel like those for me, maybe it's just because like that's how we learned it. So maybe I'm biased, So I do think both have a good way of doing it, though.
I will say it's hard for this generation because they both knew those things from TikTok. Like there's a bunch of like TikTok videos that spoil that. It's like there'll be TikTok videos of like the top 10 biggest surprises in film, and that's like always on there. And so they already knew that going into it. So it is a little harder to keep that secret from them.
I guess that's a good point. And in that case, then watching it in order is probably the best, Crystal said, poor Joe. And then Marty said, what if Grogu shows up in The Last of Us and vice versa? I'm glad Disney does not own both franchises. So
I can almost guarantee there's a mod for the Last of Us video game where they replace Ellie with Grogu.
That would be
out there. Yeah.
If it doesn't exist yet, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you guys easily win an all Star Wars Jeopardy? I don't know.
I think that depends on who you're up against. Like, could I beat Dave Filoni? Not a chance.
Not a chance, no. And then it's like, I'm not as well versed. So I'm very well versed in the movies and the animated shows and the Legends expanded universe books, but I haven't read any of the new books. So like if they brought some trivia from those in, like I don't know who any of those people are. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know if I could win easily. I do think I could hold my own. And I think with your average Star Wars fan, I probably know a little more or the upper tier of stuff. But I don't know about easily win Jeopardy,
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest stuff would be some of the later expanded universe books. Like when they get into like Han and Leia's kids and stuff.
Oh yeah, those were some of my favorites.
Yeah, I wasn't reading them there.
Yeah.
I'm good in the comics if you start when Disney bought them, but if you go back before Disney bought Star Wars, I don't know anything from the comics of that back then. Movies and TV show, I'd be okay. Video games, I'd do okay.
Yeah, video games, I'd be fine.
Yeah,
which
it just depends.
The new Star Wars game comes out Friday.
Yeah,
are you gonna pick it up?
I still have to finish what I'm playing now. That's the only problem with like being a dad is that I have to fight for TV time. So get like an hour or two a week to kind of do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think I'm definitely picking it up. I know I haven't played or streamed Hogwarts much at all since I did the first couple times, but I will be streaming the new game. So.
I'll be watching that then because I like the story of Cal, and I think the actor they got to play him is perfect. And so he's out. There you go. That's something I would say. It would be nice if they would introduce Cal into some of the live action stuff.
100%.
He's like perfect 1-to-1.
I don't think it's a mistake or a coincidence that they hired somebody who is an actor to voice Cal Kestis and motion capture him. And I think it was for more than motion capture.
Agreed.
So yeah, she was borderline hysterical. She's got the big feels. Dang.
Yeah, it was a rough night.
Crystal said, "I think Nick could." So Crystal has a lot of faith in me in Jeopardy. She said, "Best Star Wars trivia team: Nick, Q, and Philander." That would be.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be a pretty strong Star Wars. I would feel pretty confident about between the three of us. You know, I would feel pretty confident. So let's talk about. We've talked about our favorite things, the season overall. I want to talk about Grogu here a little bit. All right. Okay. I like Grogu. I enjoy Grogu. This season, I did not really like Grogu very much.
Oh, what was like the? I'm indifferent, so I'm just curious.
So by the end of the season, where he's like in IG-11 and the no, like I thought that was great. That was like peak Grogu, very on character for him. I liked it. Everything before that, I felt like he wasn't needed. I feel like I feel like we got him back from Luke too soon. Like he should not have come back midway through Book of Boba, right? He should not have come back. I think that we should have got him coming back to Mando in this season. That way, people who didn't watch Book of Boba would not have been so confused. I cannot tell you how many messages we had to talk about that on IG when people were asking about it, right? They were very confused. And I just felt like he didn't do anything. The only major character moment he had up until he got put in IG-11 was him kind of going and saving Din, like on Mando. But, and I do think that was a big moment for him. So that was a good job. But the R droid could have done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it was needed. And, you know, apparently for those that don't know, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have said that Grogu was with Luke for a couple years.
Yeah, there's like a big gap between
season 2 and we don't ever feel that at all.
Yeah.
And I wish we did feel that a little more. Because it's basically we saw Grogu go and then he came right back.
Yeah, that's where I think like I agree with you. Putting those episodes in the Book of Boba really kind of messed with the timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like you could watch it all continuously and you wouldn't miss any time really. Especially because there's like you said, there's no real change in Mandalorian from season 2 to season 3. It's not like he's like wearing new armor or you know, learn something new or acting different.
Grogu's gonna live to be like 1,000. So 2 years, he didn't age at all. He's still not even talking, which is something I want to get to as well, right? Yeah. But even had they made him talk or speak some at all, maybe we would have realized that it skipped ahead a little bit, you know?
Or even like do a little bit more with the Force. You know what I mean? Give him like where he's actively using it a bit more. It doesn't have to be, you know, him, you know, flying around like Yoda in Attack of the Clones or anything. Right. But just like more like even just him floating himself like more frequently instead of walking everywhere. You know what I mean? Just little stuff like that reminds you that, oh yeah, he did learn something with Luke.
Yeah, and maybe not being exhausted after every use of it.
Yeah.
You know? Though I would say by the end of the episode, the season, he was doing pretty good. He deserved,
like that scene with the fire was fantastic.
He deserved the nappy time after that. You know? I mean, he did what's his name in Rebels couldn't do. So what Kanan, right? Kanan.
Yeah.
Let's see. Marty says, "What Star Wars shows or movies would you guys like Disney to develop that they haven't yet?" For me, this is an easy question. It's going to be like Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's never played those video games, these came out during like the first Xbox era of gaming. So whatever year that was, what is that, like 2003, 4, 5, like back then, I think. Full RPG takes place, 1,000 years before the prequels. There's full Sith, Jedi, great games. My favorite character, one of my favorite characters of all time, Darth Revan, is in there. Shout out to Q, because I can see my Funko Pop that you got me sitting right over there with all my favorite ones. So yeah, I would love to see Knights of the Old Republic.
I'm gonna pick one, even though she's technically from the Disney era, she's only been in the comics. But there's a character in the comics called Dr. Aphra, and the way that you meet her is she's basically this corrupted archaeologist. Like, think Indiana Jones, but shady. And Vader hires her to go find some Sith artifacts. And she puts together like this, almost like this anti-New Hope squad. So she has like this protocol droid that's become an assassin. The evil Wookiee that was in Book of Boba Fett, that's her. He worked for her. That's where you first meet him.
Yep,
Was working for her. And anyway, so she is like an incredibly cool character. And I think that she has no force powers, nothing. She's just a regular person who like lives in that gray area you were talking about earlier. And but she's like an archaeologist who's like studies all of this like hidden stuff, and she'll go out and basically snag stuff for people and bring it in. And I think that she would actually translate so well to the big screen or to a TV show. And there's like a lot of depth to her character. And, you know, there's just a lot to her that I think that in a TV show, people would really find her intriguing and appealing. So definitely. Yeah. And I would recommend checking out her series. There's an omnibus for it out at the comic book shops, or you can order on Amazon. But her series is really, really good.
I have read parts of it, but I've heard nothing but good things. So I definitely want to check it out. I won't give it away too much, but we get a very watered down, boring version of that character in Bad Batch.
Oh, okay, good to know.
So, but like, it's definitely not replacing her or supposed to be her, but it's like the same concept.
Okay.
Which I would love to see that in Star Wars. I think I was watching IGN's review. They did a no spoiler review for the new Star Wars game coming out on Friday. And they compared him to being like the Nathan Drake or Indiana Jones of Star Wars Force users, right?
Okay.
Yeah, he's a Jedi, or he's learning to be a Jedi, but you're also exploring like Jedi tombs and these ruins and these puzzles. And I was like, man, these would make such great movies, like such fun movies. But seeing a non-Force user do it would be great. Plus, we could get more interaction with Vader, which is always, I feel like, a good thing. I would love that. Both Crystal and Jen kind of hit the same topic. We need Grogu to start talking.
Yeah, I agree.
So like, I agree, but like, I'm kind of a big fan of like the no, yes button. Like, but like, maybe if they expanded that so that he could like use the Force to trigger something to talk for him.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't want him to baby talk. I'd rather have no talk than like toddler talk from him. And I feel like it would have to be toddler talk to make sense. Somebody online said that maybe Grogu doesn't talk because like he has PTSD from Order 66.
Oh, that's deep.
And I was like, that would actually make like a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe he could start talking more normally, like after he like works through those traumas, which maybe he would have if he would have got to stay with Luke longer, right?
Yeah, you would think that would be like day one, job one, but you know, as we learn later on, Luke's not always exactly the best teacher. So
right, yeah, very true. At least he probably didn't try to murder Grogu. See, even Jen didn't realize that much time had passed. It's super not obvious, you know?
No, not even close.
I mean, I definitely don't want them to do a 2 years later like thing, but people need to know that some time had passed.
Well, I mean, like even at least in the Marvel movies, you know, time has passed because people have different facial hair, different hairstyles, and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But if you look exactly the same as when you last saw them, you won't think anything of it.
You could always tell time passed in a Marvel movie because like Iron Man's suit is like 9 numbers higher since the last one. Like, the last time you saw him, he was in the Mark 7. Well, he's in the Mark 18 now. And you're just like...
Or like Chris Pratt has a random like, you know, Tom Selleck mustache.
Right. Or he like learned what a Zune is. You know what I mean? Like, Marty said, can you tell us what the
Thrawn
storyline is? Huh?
The Thrawn. I think it's supposed to be Thrawn.
Oh, yeah. Do you mean Thrawn, Marty? We'll come back to that. Just let us know if that's what you meant for sure. She could have an artifact of the week. Yeah, you know, I think like every episode she'd be going after a different artifact or and you know, to touch on that, how much I would have loved to see like Star-Lord like going after different artifacts in Guardians of the Galaxy, you know what I mean? Like we opened to him going after the Power Stone. and I think that would have been really really cool as well. So yeah, I'm with it, Um, but yeah, I think that would be really cool. Either an item a week or like I feel like she'd have to like loot a couple like low end items first for Vader to like prove herself, which maybe she does in the comics. I don't know. And then like it ends with her going after a major one, which like I've never read these, but does she go after the Sith Wayfinder at all or any?
No, they this is gonna get super deep. So if you guys they are, so what they have is they have a Sith assassin that works for Darth Vader, whose name is Bocce. If you watched Rise of Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker, they mentioned that there's this dead guy that they find in a cave who had like the Sith Wayfinder.
Oh yeah.
They introduce him in the comics as working for Vader.
Oh wow.
He's kind of like Vader's like. He functions almost like a non-fourth wall breaking Deadpool, and that he's kind of doing his own thing, but working for Vader at the same time. And he's like an assassin who goes out and kills people for Vader.
Right.
And so Bocce's the one that's like actually goes out and finds the Wayfinder. So it's not Afra. Afra was hired to find the parts that Luke would use to construct his new lightsaber. So basically to get to them before Luke.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. We could even maybe get some kind of like Luke flashback. We could even get like obviously lots of Vader. So I think that would be pretty cool. So yeah, it was Thrawn Marty was asking about. So I'll talk. I don't know how much you remember in the old books about Thrawn.
I remember so I remember more about it from the old books than I do what they did in Rebels, because when they reintroduced in Rebels, the old books, I think I mentioned to you last time I talked to you, I have not only the old books, but they released a special 30th anniversary edition where they put the author's notes about the first book.
That's right. You were saying that,
yeah, and about like what he was thinking, where some of his thought processes were, what he went to Lucas to ask if he could do, and what Lucas rejected, like all sorts of stuff about how he wrote that first book. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to do the books? Do you want to do Rebels? What do you think would probably make the most sense?
I think maybe we should just try to give the people on here like a general idea of who Thrawn is if they've never seen anything. So I'll start with a little bit and then like I'll have you jump in.
Okay.
So at the very like crux of it, Thrawn is an alien who is, so he looks very humanoid, but he has blue skin. The alien race he's part of is called the Chiss, right? So they are a race we've never seen in Star Wars before in any of the movies. And their planet is in like the outer regions of space, right? So they're not really in like known space. They don't trade with the Republic or the Empire. They're their own kind of like standalone empire, like the Chiss Ascendancy, I think they used to be called. And so if you guys follow it, the Empire is very symbolic of any fascist government. If you are not what that government represents, like if like, not to bring up the Germans, but like the Nazis, blonde hair, white-eyed, like a lot of the fascist government. So it's very rare in Star Wars culture to see any non-human become a high-ranking Imperial officer. And so Thrawn makes it to Admiral. And he does that because when he walks in a room, he is literally going to be the smartest person in the room. He has emotions. He's not like Spock, but he doesn't let them stop him, right? Like he's very calculated. His backup plans have a backup plan. In Rebels, I don't remember if they introduced this in the old books, but in Rebels, he basically talks about he learns everything about a race that he's fighting or trying to dominate through their artwork. And so I always thought that was super interesting, so we see that a lot in Rebels. So if you've never been exposed to Thrawn, the original books he was in, the 3 books, starting with Heir to the Empire, are amazing, but they're not canon anymore.
Right.
But that same author, which David alluded to, they he did write new books that are canon again, which is awesome because he's like probably one of the best Star Wars writers out there. But if you want to get introduced to him before anybody who plans on watching Ahsoka, you should watch Rebels.
100%.
So
it's almost required viewing for it.
What else would you want to add about Thrawn?
The only other thing I probably would add about Thrawn is that he is a not in terms of evil, but in terms of like threat level. He's the closest thing that Star Wars has to like another Palpatine or Vader level like threat. Like he is someone that like Nick was mentioning, Palpatine was, I guess you would call it racist, but you know, he only liked humans, whatever that
I think it's xenophobic or something.
Yeah, xenophobic, that's right. Yeah. Palpatine is incredibly xenophobic. He doesn't like aliens, which is why there's no aliens in the Empire. And Thrawn, by his sheer skill and ability, so this is canon because I've read the new books where they reintroduce Thrawn. His race sent him to the Empire to infiltrate it so they could learn how to take it over. Right. But over the course of it, what Thrawn discovered is that he buys into Palpatine's need for this galaxy to have order. He wants to basically build up that order. So he's a big believer in Palpatine's thought and process. And his whole thing is about preparing the Star Wars galaxy to take on his race when they eventually invade in the future. And so he will do anything in his power to make them ready to take it on, even if it means crushing all other people and making it a one government place, because he figures that's the best way to fight them off rather than a bunch of like factions everywhere.
Right.
So he's scary, not in the same way of Vader's scary where it's raw power. He's scary because he is brilliant and he's a believer in his cause, and so there's nothing you'll do to change his mind.
Right. And I do like that you threw in like he's not inherently evil.
No.
He's a believer in his cause, and at this time that cause is going to be some form of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be really interesting to see which route they go. I was so excited when they showed Palian. I don't know how I think Palian.
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited when they showed him. And so for those of you that don't know, that was the older white-haired gentleman in that like Council of Imperial Remnant. It was really cool to see him. And I'm hoping they canonize Admiral Dahlia as well at some point, you know. But it'll be interesting to see how Thrawn plays into it. If you were paying attention, you'll notice that Hux's dad is on that council as well. Mm-hmm. So Hux is kind of like leading the First Order when we catch up with the First Order. So I'm kind of thinking that either whatever we're going to see with like this Mando universe with Thrawn and Ahsoka and the Mando movie that's coming down the road is Thrawn going to die and lose, or will he be absorbed into the First Order, or does he bounce out and do his own thing? It's going to be interesting to see what route Disney takes the canon with, right? Because we don't know now. We know where the old stories went, you know, but we don't necessarily know that that's where they're going to go here. And for those of you guys that have never read the books, in the books that took place before Disney bought them, the Empire never had, the New Order is not a thing.
Yeah.
Like the Empire kind of becomes what's known as the Imperial Remnant, and they fight the New Republic on and off for a lot of years, and then they kind of are forced to sign like a treaty and then work together to stop a new threat coming into the galaxy, who's not Thrawn's people, but kind of like a similar idea or concept.
Basically.
Which hopefully that idea and concept will never come to the movies, because it worked in the books, but it would not work in the movies, I don't think.
I don't think so either. I guess the best way to kind of sum up Thrawn is similar to how Marvel, they built up, you know, Thanos over the course of it, and he was like the ultimate like bad person. Thrawn is basically the closest that Mando's time period has to someone that you build up as like the ultimate like villain of like that era.
Yeah, agreed. That's a great way to put it. Jen said, how long had Mandalore been in ruin? Like, how many years did the land pirates run around. It's probably been... It would have been a long time, because the Siege of Mandalore and the Night of 1,000 Tears happens before A New Hope, which A New Hope is 19 years after Revenge of the Sith. And the Siege of Mandalore basically happens the exact same time as Revenge of the Sith. So those Mandalorians would have been running around on that planet for like 25 years, right? Or my numbers way off.
Yeah, that's probably about right, especially if you figure like the Mandalorian, the show, takes place a few years after Return of the Jedi. So yeah, that's probably about right.
Yeah, rough math, probably somewhere around like 25-ish years.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was kind of shady. I thought they were going to be the bad guy, to be honest.
Same. Oh, I thought a lot of people were going to be the bad guy. I was watching that last episode, just waiting for someone to pop out and be the bad guy.
Yeah, we were talking about it. We were like expecting it was going to be Axel, and then was it going to be the armor? Like, why would it be the armor? Have you seen the talks about the Moff Gideon clone?
Yes, that was actually going to be one of the things I was going to bring up. Yeah.
So for everybody in the chat, so Moff Gideon in seasons 1 and 2 has a mustache, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this season, he doesn't have a mustache, and neither do his clones that they show in the tank, or at least the one you get a really good look of at.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are a lot of people who think that the Moff Gideon they defeated in like the, knockoff Mandalorian Darth Vader suit was a clone of Gideon, not a real Gideon.
And yeah, exactly. And that he managed to get a clone to like full term and not himself.
Right.
And so he's kind of hiding out somewhere, basically ready to kind of jump back in at some point.
Yeah, I actually thought, I'm going to be honest, I thought that that's the route they were going to go, but I thought real Gideon was dead.
So like the real Gideon died at some point, and then the clone took over, and the clones.
And they were like finishing his project, like like that girl from Coruscant and whoever she's working through were like finishing his heritage or his lineage there.
Right.
And I also thought it was all going to come together when we saw the tanks, but we didn't see Gideon was in them. I actually thought they cloned Din.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
And I thought that that's what that crab thing in Mandalore caves was extracting his blood for.
To help Gideon clone like Din?
Yeah, and any Mandos that it came across. Because he said he was trying to commit like the ultimate like army. And so, obviously the ultimate army was created once with Mandalorian blood. Arguably, if you count Jango as a Mandalorian, we don't really know if he was or wasn't directly. So that's the route I thought they were going. I was like, oh, now that weird monster makes sense. Because without that, it doesn't... What was that thing doing?
Yeah, it's just something that, like, I think that the throwaway line that they had in there to kind of explain it away was just, when they bombed Mandalore, all these weird creatures just awoke and, like, are now running wild on the planet.
Yeah, but, like, it was, like, sentient and smart.
Yeah.
And was using, like, extracting his blood. Like, I don't know. I would have liked them to tie that loose end up, and that's what I thought they were going to do in that instantaneous. As soon as I saw the clone things, I was like, oh, that thing was cloning people that came across.
Mm-hmm.
But no, apparently not. Pumpkin said, just noticed your space background. Really like it. Thank you. Jen said Weasley. I don't know what that was.
Because every time we see, because Hux plays one of the Weasleys in the Potter. So every time we see Hux, we always call out Weasley.
That's true. He was. I actually forgot that he was Percy, right?
No, Bill, I think. The one that the one that tames the dragons and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thrawn sounds super interesting. How come they didn't make the new films on him or have Timothy Zahn just looked up who wrote it, write the films? Those are
big questions people have been asking since Disney bought Star Wars. That's like the crux. If you have talked to anybody who, for whatever reason, doesn't particularly care for the new Star Wars, which, as you can tell, Nick and I aren't in that camp. That is one of their biggest complaints, is that they that they didn't just basically use the Thrawn books as like episodes 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, they would have been much better movies overall, I think. And I know most of us who were reading those books when they came out, we were just like, man, if they ever make more movies, it's gonna be these. Like to us, those were 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Like, and they are great books. Like those are still some of like the best Star Wars books ever written, I think.
Completely.
But the expanded universe does a lot of really great things. We got to see Han and Leia have 3 kids who become Jedi. We get to see Chewbacca get murdered by a moon. That was pretty interesting.
Luke gets married.
Luke turns his wife from the dark side. You want to talk about a good story?
Yeah.
Turns his wife from the dark side, turns her into a Jedi, and then brainwashes her and marries her. No, I'm just kidding. But no, they do end up falling in love, right? But not everything was great. There was lots of terrible stories too.
Yeah,
but they also the expanded universe did a great job showing Luke's failings as a teacher. If you remember, like one of my favorite characters that was kind of on the outline of stories there for a while was if you remember Kip Durin.
Yeah.
Stole the Sun Cruiser, committed a little genocide, nothing he couldn't come back from. But like I thought they did a good job with some of those stories, Maybe that's why they wiped the doctor. And that's what I thought. I thought that maybe they basically had finished that guy's work, so they mind wiped him. I feel like we left this season, as much as it feels like they answered everything, and a lot of people were saying, oh, is this a secret series finale? Like, it kind of left a lot of questions, right? Like, we don't really know what the end game of that chick and what's going on Coruscant is.
Yeah.
We don't know what that thing in the caves was or why it existed. It's probably just a throwaway. I would argue that, like, it was very interesting that they destroyed the Darksaber.
Yeah. Yeah, that one kind of came out of nowhere. I think, I like I said, I felt like they had a bunch of other plans for other stuff that they were going to do between Mando season 2 and this season.
Yeah.
And they just never got to do it. And so they tried to wrap up as much as they could so they could start where they wanted to for season 4 and Ahsoka and all the rest of it.
I think my theory towards the destruction of the Darksaber, and it might take a while to come to fruition, is that Grogu is destined to wield it.
Oh, that's cool.
And the size of the current hilt was not wieldable for little Grogu or even full-grown Yoda. And what is left of the hilt and crystal will be reforged into a small Grogu-sized Darksaber. That's my theory.
Yeah.
I think that the Darksaber is too popular to not have that happen, and I just think it makes sense. That's my theory. So I don't know. We'll see. Walter said, is Boba Fett related to the Mandalorian? So he's not. Boba Fett is actually a clone. So if you watched the prequels, Boba Fett is Jango Fett's son, but not. He's a clone of Jango Fett, but it's his quote unquote son. And Jango Fett is not really tied to being an actual Mandalorian. So we don't really know whether he was or wasn't. In some of the books, Boba Fett at one point leads Mandalore. But also he may not have been Mandalorian, so it's hard to tell. But they're not related. They just wear the same armor.
Mm-hmm. And Din's actually not even technically Mandalorian either. He was like a foundling, and then was adopted by the Mandalorian people.
Exactly.
Honestly, only in the show, Bo is full-blooded Mandalorian, and her squad, and just like the armorer is, but the rest of them, it seems like they hint are various people that like you said, cult kind of came around and found and basically turned into this like little mini Mandalorian army.
Right. Yeah, they're definitely like sprinkled in. Anybody. Yeah. A good way to tell on it, and it's not the perfect way, but if you're watching any of the large scenes of the Mandalorians that are with the armorer, if anybody is in like the dark and light blue armor, they are likely actual Mandalorians because they're in the Death Watch armor. That doesn't mean that they didn't inherit that armor from somebody. But theoretically, if they still have Death Watch insignia on them, they're probably real Mandalorians. I would say it's a good way of telling. I'm skipping down, but Walter, another good question: is Boba Fett the only clone of Jango who survived? Yes and no. They touched on it a little bit. So the rest of the clones of Jango, they were the clones you actually see in like the white clone trooper armor, fighting for the old Republic, right, or for the Republic, and to get them at the up to fighting age, they basically talk about in the movies that they were given like growth enhancers and aged up, so they age much more rapidly than like a normal humanoid in the Star Wars galaxy. And so by the time Return of the Jedi comes around, any of them that still were living would be in like their 80s, I think, technically, because of the aging process. But we do see, I think it was this season, we do see them pass a clone trooper begging for credits. I think that was this season.
That was that was last season.
Maybe it was last season. Yeah, okay. It was on that like rainy planet, right?
Yep.
It was like raining. And so we do see it. So some are still around. There are some very prominent ones from the Clone Wars cartoons, such as Rex, who we do know that in Rebels, which takes place roughly, I don't know, Rebels probably takes place 12 years, 10 to 12 years, maybe 8 years before A New Hope. There are still clones who have been phased out. The Empire phased them all out, which is what Bad Batch is covering a ton of. So if you're interested in that, you should really watch Bad Batch. But they may be still around. We might see a couple. It's rumored someone might pop up in Ahsoka.
So there's a fun fan thing that I think Filoni confirmed. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, I know where you're going with this.
In Return of the Jedi, there is a guy who's on the landing party on Endor who looks a lot like Rex, who Nick just mentioned.
Yeah.
And basically the implication is that he's one of the clones that survived to Return of the Jedi, Rex specifically, and was there with them to blow up basically the Death Star, which I think, if I remember right, Filoni said, yeah, that makes sense to me. Not necessarily outright saying, oh yeah, this is 100% right plan, but that it's a good theory, and I kind of like it because it feels kind of poetic.
Yeah, it would just be one of those like headcanon theories for sure, but it is an interesting idea, right?
Yep.
Marty said, kind of weird Disney gave Star Wars control to random screenwriters when even Marvel has adapted comic book stories successfully, so shown it can be done. I think a couple things happened, right? I think that I honestly, a lot of people blame Kathleen Kennedy for the state of Star Wars, and I do think she has a big hand in it. I don't think she loves it the same way that like Favreau and Filoni love it. But I'm honestly listening. I love Bob Iger like a lot. I think he's a great leader of the Disney company as a whole. But I've listened to both his book, like his memoir book, and also other interviews he's given, and I think he did a great job of like not really like they kind of let Pixar do their own thing. They didn't really step in. They kind of let Marvel do their own thing. But he talks about being a really big Star Wars fan. You know, he grew up in that era, and Star Wars cost them a lot of money, and they were very interested in making that money back very quickly. And I think a lot of the push to get movies out was from Disney execs rather than internal Lucasfilms.
I agree. I think that there was a desire, for good and for bad, to make Disney Star Wars.
Yes.
The Disney version of Star Wars, and make it distinct from, feel like it had a connection to what came before, but make it distinctly like Disney's owned Star Wars. And I think that, like you said, I think, yeah, it's evident because, I mean, there's been interviews where they even said that they didn't really have an overarching plan for 7, 8, 9. They kind of let the screenwriters come in and do their own thing for it. And so rather than have like a direct vision, they let J.J. Abrams come in and set up a bunch of stuff that they could touch on, and then allowed Knives Out.
I don't know why I can't think of his name. Ryan Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Right, let Ryan Johnson come in and basically write the second one to kind of go the direction that he wanted to, and then correct it back to bring J.J. Abrams back to the middle and kind of try to make sense of it all.
Right.
And so I think that they wanted to go in a direction where they were establishing these are our Star Wars characters. But I think, like you said, there was a push to rush that out. And so rather than take the time to build a foundation for the future, they figured they'll just do it as they go. Kind of similar to how George Lucas did it, if we're being honest. I mean, he did have his overarching like storyline, but Luke and Leia's story alone and how they interacted with each other throughout the 3 movies shows he didn't have everything kind of figured out. He kind of did it as he went, and it worked for him. And so Disney probably figured they could do the same thing, and it just didn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah, and my biggest problem with like Kathleen Kennedy is in like interviews, she will be like, we had to come up with it all on our own. We didn't have years of comics to fall back on. But I'm like, but you did.
Yeah.
You did, But yeah, I think that's a good point. I think Disney did want to get away. I mean, for many reasons, right? I mean, Carrie Fisher, when she was alive still, RIP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill, they're old.
Yeah.
They're old. The de-aging is very expensive. It doesn't look the best. So the choices were tell a Thrawn story and heavily de-age or recast these beloved characters. And let's be honest, it doesn't matter if they recast or de-age, they weren't going to get it right. With half the fan base was going to hate it, right?
Mm-hmm, completely.
Because look what happened with Luke at the end of Mandalorian season 2, right? Half the fan base hated the deep fake that they did for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of one of the special effects teams I watched went out to make it better. Like they hired their own and did a deep fake. They did a great job, but so I think they kind of had, or they skip ahead and they kind of write these characters out, and that's the route they ended up going so that they could bring their own characters in. But I do think they made a giant mistake not having somebody outline an overall story. Like I think that J.J. Abrams should not have turned in a movie. He should have turned in an arc, and they could have made him into movies, right? And I know whoever asked the question said give it to random screenwriters. I don't think that like Abrams as a writer and director at that point in his career is a random screenwriter. I think you have to remember that he successfully, in many people's eyes, made Star Trek interesting again.
I agree. I like the new Star Trek movies. Star Trek movies a lot.
And maybe hardcore Star Trek fans didn't, but that's not what sells movie tickets anyways, for better or worse. I just think they needed someone like Filoni and Favreau. They needed a Kevin Feige in Lucasfilm to kind of make sure the stories are cohesive, and that's what they were missing.
Yeah.
We answered that. Will you guys do a watch party of the new Peter Pan and Wendy show? We might. Crystal and I might. It's a movie. Okay, so it is a movie. So yeah, even more reason. The movie would be easier to do a watch party on. Maybe we will. Marty said that's really interesting. Makes sense. Are Luke, Leia, Han, etc. in the Thrawn stories? They are.
Everyone is in there. Lando's in there. Chewbacca's in there.
R2, C-3PO.
Yeah.
Lots of very popular characters. All of them are there. I don't know how they play into the new Thrawn stories, though. The new ones don't take place all after Return of the Jedi, right?
Right. No, the new Thrawn stories, if you were to read the new books based on Thrawn, they do have him meet Anakin and go to Batuu, which is interesting. I think I thought was random.
It's like the episode of Full House when they go to Disney World.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it felt that way. That is one thing, I guess, like as an aside, that I'm surprised. I have to give Disney credit for the restraint that we haven't seen Batuu in live action. Like I thought for sure in one of these shows they were going to show up and go to Oga's. Like I would have sworn they would have done that. And
it would make sense in The Mandalorian, dude.
Yeah.
Like some random back planet, right?
Completely, yeah. But they do have Thrawn does meet Anakin and later Vader, when they're both vying for Palpatine's like approval. So yeah, I do recommend the new version of the Thrawn books, because those are canon and that actually play into the Rebel show that Nick's talking about.
I was gonna say that those books take place kind of like before Rebels and during Rebels, right? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Good to know. Definitely J.J. Abrams should have turned in an arc, and J.J. was the only one who I meant wasn't a random screener, but still could have really, yeah. I mean, I still think it would have been better if we would have had like a Timothy Zahn type writer or somebody come in and really turn in like a strong arc and go that route. But so I think we've pretty much talked about Mando season 3 pretty heavily. Is there anything? I know you said you made notes. Was there anything in your notes we didn't touch on or get to?
The only other thing I probably would mention is I think it's interesting where they left Mando and Grogu. I put a TikTok up on my Instagram stories about this, but they gave us a happy ending at the end of this season. And I think that I do want to give them credit for basically giving Din himself, like just Din the character, a full story arc. Because if you watch where he was in the first episode to the guy he is at the end, he's got growth. He's like, come into his own. He's not the same guy.
No.
And if you just watch the 3 seasons, just him in those 3 seasons, they did a really good job. One of the best like arcs I think of any of like the characters in Star Wars in general. Like we were talking about before, where they kind of stay kind of static throughout the whole thing. They did a good job with him of giving him an arc of he was this loner who was kind of just basically there for himself. He believed in this cult creed, but otherwise he's basically just out to take care of himself. And now he's basically a dad who, has a mission basically to help the galaxy in his own way. You know what I mean? He's not like freedom fighter, going to join the New Republic. He's going to help in his own way and raise his kid at the same time. Because he wants to I guess it's the best way to put it. Like speaking as a father, he's looking at it like, I want to make the galaxy safe for my son. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of this.
Right. And they definitely like touch on like he wants to give Grogu, I feel like what he didn't necessarily have in like family, right? He had his Mandalorian cult, because that's what I'm going to call them, right? But and I do agree. They did a really good job giving him growth. I think pretty much everybody in this series, to be honest, had growth except maybe Gideon, who by season 3 I feel like kind of just came off as like a cartoonish villain, to be honest.
Which does kind of support the clone theory if you think about it. I mean, he regressed, and then maybe that's why he's just kind of one note.
Right, and it does kind of fit that, which I'm going to be honest, I hope they don't go that route. I agree. Yeah. I love the actor that plays Moff Gideon, but like I'm done with Gideon. Like there are plenty of other Imperial warlords, including Thrawn, but also the other ones they showed. I want some of them.
Yeah.
I got enough Gideon, Yeah. I was going to say, I don't remember what I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something. But yeah, I loved the point you made about like his growth. The only thing that's what I was gonna say. The only thing I wish they would have done with Din a little more is I kind of wish he would have realized the whole leaving your helmet thing on is like total BS at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a Pedro thing, if I'm being honest.
I think it is too, and that's actually something I had in my notes that we didn't get to. Is I found it very interesting that if you listen to like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. In Mandalorian season 1, they wanted to pay Pedro as a voice actor and not an actor. And he was like, well, I'll take my helmet off on a couple episodes then. Yeah. And I'll actually be in the suit sometimes. And so there are scenes in season 1 and 2 where he's out of the helmet. And we didn't get any of that this season. And I personally think it makes I think they do a pretty good job with him showing like emotions, even though he's in a helmet. Mm-hmm. But it's clear that that's what Grogu's for, right? Grogu is the audience most of the time. But I feel like we can't just have dude in a suit. Like I need to know he's in there sometimes.
Pedro specifically.
or like an actor. Like I feel like
Got
there's
it.
so many scenes they could have just propped the damn thing up with an animatronic and made it work. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I just feel like we need to get a little FaceTime sometimes. And I think some of the best moments in season 1 and 2 were when he was out of his comfort zone with his helmet off and having to deal with being vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked to see more of that. I would have liked to see Moff Gideon basically de-helmet him in front of all
Right.
of
I was 100% expecting
he
that.
worked so hard to become like forgiven and be valued again by his Mandalorian clan that then Moff Gideon closes the blast doors and rips his helmet off in front of everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
now he's not worthy again, even more so because he let someone take his helmet off. But then by the end of the episode, the armorer doesn't care because he just saved the whole clan. He just
Right.
saved Grogu and fought valiantly. And they kind of realize, maybe more than just Bo can walk both worlds. I would have liked to see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. A lot of it has to do with his contract, and I think like being busy filming so many other things that he's not even in the suit most of the time.
Yeah.
What do we got here? Should we give a lot of credit to Pedro? Should we give a lot of credit for Pedro Pascal for choosing a role where his face wouldn't be seen and becomes one of the biggest show's characters? I mean, his voice is iconic at this point, though, for it, But I would say the mannerisms of the Mandalorian are of Din are just as much the people who are in the suit more often than he is. I did see some behind the scenes photos. He was in the suit for the finale, but I don't know how much of it,
Yeah, completely.
Crystal said they just dropped the Star Wars Night Guide.
Oh, fun.
Very cool, very cool. If you're looking at it, Chris, are there any cool characters announced that weren't announced before? Can Thrawn be considered a gray character? Because more of those would be cool in Star Wars. I would say he is gray, but he's very determined with what he's trying to do, right?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's definitely gray, but 100% like the bad guy for our favorite characters.
Yeah.
Like if you could be Thrawn and still be like consider yourself a good person, because in Thrawn's mind he is a good person.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't just like he's not like Vader who will just murder somebody just to murder them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everything has a purpose, everything has a plan. One of the things that's a big basis of Thrawn's character in the books is that he rewards loyalty. There's actually a scene in the expanded universe books where one of his officers on the bridge makes a mistake, and everyone on the bridge braces themselves for Thrawn to kill him, like Vader we used to. Mm-hmm. And he even calls out specifically that he doesn't do that, that you learn from mistakes and that you grow from them, and that's how you build a better army. So I think, yeah, he probably is pretty close to gray.
Very cool, very cool. I agree. I thought for sure his helmet was getting ripped off. Agreed. And then Pumpkin said we have to go over the Star Wars Night Guide. I don't know. Do you have time, Dave? You want to go over it real quick?
Yeah, I can.
Let's take a look at it. Star Wars Night. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Give me a second here.
So while you're typing, I'll just let everyone know. Nick and I and Crystal and a couple other people will be there actually on the May 4th Star Wars night. So we already have tickets for that to kind of go over there and hang out that night. And see, and then we all went to the one last year. You went to the one the weekend of celebration too, right? It wasn't just yeah. And so that was fun. I think if the throwback night actually looked really fun from your guys' video, so I'm hoping that it seems like the after hours events this year have progressively gotten better. So I'm hoping that that'll give us some good stuff for Star Wars night this year.
That's what I'm hoping too. I really am hoping that we're gonna get something. If any of you guys know where the guide is, if you could drop the URL in here, that would be really, really helpful. Because I'm trying to find it, and I would love to pull it up.
If I were to open a browser window, would that mess stuff up?
I don't think so. I hope we can see you guys do a live stream recap of Star Wars Night. Really enjoying you two. Oh, we appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
It is definitely hard to do like a live stream recap, at least at the night, just because like For Q, he comes down here. It's kind of like a little bit of a vacation mode for him too. And then like it gets over at 1 a.m. So.
Well, just so you know, I'm actually taking that whole weekend off work, so because it's just me coming down, so I'll actually be down there until I'm coming home on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you need me to do anything Friday or Saturday, just let me know.
For sure, yeah. Okay, so the event guide, I found it.
Oh, good.
It is very hard to read because it's a PDF.
Okay.
But I'm going to share my screen, so let me share it. Give me 1 second here, guys. Present. Share screen. All right. So you guys should all be able to see my screen now, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. And then how's this? Oh, the stream looks great still. Okay, cool. I'm going to pull this down so we have a little bit more room up there. Let me pull this banner down too. All right, cool. Less distracting. So I'm going to try to like zoom in a little bit so we can
Oh, I can read this. That's easy to read.
Yeah, okay, cool. So it looks like we're going to have a galactic DJ party, right? So this is going to be on Main Street, 10:30 to 1. Fleet of Fandom. I have no idea what that is, but I think
they did that last year. That's
parade,
that
right?
Parade where everybody in their costumes goes marching down Main Street.
I was like, didn't you take place in that last year?
No, the girls did that. My daughters went and did it.
Oh, okay,
they were all excited to do it. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you did it too.
No, I just videotaped them.
Okay.
Or recorded them. Sorry, that aged me.
I will say the lightsaber meetup was absolute pandemonium and amazing.
Yes.
This if you're going, this
help is on the way.
I already got it.
Oh. You still need me.
Crystal came to help, but I already
got it. She can talk with us about it if she wants, since she's going to be there
you
too.
can jump in now. I'm not scooting over though.
No, that's fine. I don't need to be seen.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not moving.
Yeah,
I'm like
fine.
sunk in.
Yeah.
The lightsaber meetup looks phenomenal.
But it's packed in there. It's like wall to wall people.
Exactly. And so, but there is something I noticed this year. So last year, the lightsaber meetup started after the fireworks. The meetup starts at 9 this year.
Oh,
and they're doing 3.
Oh, they're doing 3. I see. There they are.
Yeah.
Did they do?
They did 2 last year. Yep. I want to say.
Yeah.
But they were all just like one long one.
It didn't really ever end.
No.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So Crystal and I were talking about watching. So first of all, I loved and Crystal loved the Star Wars Night fireworks.
Yeah, we were with you guys like watching it last year. We all kind of watched in front of the castle last year.
Yeah, they were great. It was a short show, but a great show overall. But we talked about, the show will probably be the exact same this year, I would imagine.
Minus the fire.
Most likely, 100%. So we were thinking maybe we might watch fireworks from Batu.
That's cool. That's a good idea.
So I think
maybe less busy out there.
The lightsaber meetup, the event starts at 9 and the first meetup's at 9. So Batu is gonna be popping. But I think watching it from over there, if we can get up by docking bay 7 prior to 9 o'clock, like we head over there at like 8 o'clock or 7:30, and just chill in Batu.
As soon as we get in the park.
Just chill in Batu till it starts. That might be the way to go. Check the lightsaber meetup. And then like everything else going on is kind of like out of Batu anyways.
Yeah.
So March of the First Order is in Tomorrowland at 10, 11, and 12. I love the March of the First Order. It's really fun to see. Lightsaber Masters. I don't know what this is.
They did this last year. It was like people doing tricks with a lightsaber, basically.
Okay. Did you check it out? Or did you walk by it?
Walk by it, yeah.
Was it worth watching?
It reminded me a lot of, do you remember the Jedi trials that they used to have in Tomorrowland? Yes. And they would have people come out and show off their stuff. It reminded me of that. Okay.
So I think what everybody probably wants to see are the characters. And so it looks like we're getting a repeat of Ezra and Sabine, the Seventh Sister, Captain Rex. So they were all there last year. Zam was there last year. BB-8 and
C-130.
That's Chopper.
Yes! Okay, that's what I thought. That's
Crystal's. I love Chopper.
Crystal's favorite droid, which is from Rebels. You guys have to watch Rebels.
That's it. I'm dressing up as Sabine.
Ewoks and
That's
R5. Okay, so R5, the red droid from Mandalorian season 3,
and Jawas,
and the Jawas, and then Queen Amidala. Did we get her last year?
I don't think.
I don't think so.
I don't see Princess Leia on this.
No,
weird.
Because she was there for Princess Night.
She was there for Princess Night. I'm gonna call it out. I really thought we were gonna get Bo Katan.
Yeah,
me too.
And
there's no Ahsoka.
No Ahsoka and no Bo.
Nope.
I think those are for different reasons, though. I personally think we will be getting Ahsoka in the future.
Yeah.
Because they did, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Right.
Wasn't the Ahsoka last year the Clone Wars Ahsoka?
It was Clone Wars Ahsoka.
So maybe they're saving her to do her in the style of the live action show. Maybe
that's what I'm hoping. I mean, we've had pretty good luck getting in both Marvel and Star Wars, like getting characters when their shows come out. So we're all very optimistic that we'll get an Ahsoka. That it will probably be more, like you said, more accurate to live action. So, but in these characters, some great characters, but I think like nothing we haven't seen before. Like none of these characters make me want to stand in line to wait and see them, except I do. Chopper. We got a good interaction with Ezra and Sabine last year when they were like walking away. But I know Crystal wants to see Chopper.
Do you think for like Vader and Maul and Palpatine, they're going to do like they did last year where they're on the stage and you just kind of like the distance meet and greet like they had for them last year?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. That way it's more, they did more of that. So the one thing we talked about too, though, is we loved that at Throwback Night, they had characters walking around way more often. That we've never like seen that in a After Dark Night.
Yeah.
But the night wasn't sold out. So I don't know if we'll see a lot of that outside of Galaxy's Edge.
For
Star Wars Night. Because these characters will absolutely probably be out walking around. They always are. There's nothing special about this list of characters here.
Was 3PO out last year?
I want to say he was.
Yeah, him and R2-D2 were in Batuu.
I thought so too. I could be wrong, but I thought they were in Batuu last year.
Do you know what also like surprises me is that Boba Fett
is not on the list.
Yeah, like he is a Tomorrowland character. Like
Galaxy's Edge character.
No, Tomorrow. Well, yeah, now he's in Galaxy's Edge, but like they've had his costume for so long, like
they have old Boba Fett costume.
Right.
I would love to see them bring old Boba Fett back. Right. That would be dope. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see what else we got. We got tons of different foods here. I guess I can zoom in and we can check out some of this food.
A bulgogi toasted cheese sandwich.
Oh, I know what Crystal's getting for dinner that night.
This loaded corn dog.
The corn dog doesn't look good though.
But it's loaded.
Star Wars Galaxy Edge getting, so that's all on Main Street. Look at those shock short ribs and tip yip. That looks good.
Is tip yip? That's what they serve in Docky Bay 7, isn't it?
Yeah, they do. Galaxy's Edge is getting some like fried chicken with roasted potatoes. I like that tapato is obviously potato. You know, scrolled over. Looks like we're getting some kind of ramen-ish, Gorman seed and ration cream noodles, kind of ramen-ish, I bet.
Oh, there's a sushi roll.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna be like California rolls.
Probably, because that's the easiest, I think, probably to replicate.
Right, and the safest.
Yeah.
Looks like we're gonna get some pizza. I would skip this, everybody. I don't know, the food. Nothing sounds amazing, honestly, to me, except the short rib and the bulgogi toasted cheese sandwich sound really good, honestly, with cheese soup. Like that sounds really good. Macaron. That sounds really good.
And then the Galactic Princess Sundae. It has cinnamon rolls.
Ooh.
Okay.
Look at this mossy mint churro. I'm not sure how I feel about a mint churro, you guys.
That's weird.
Right?
You should look at number 21. Over to the left a little
Pineapple coconut juice.
That Phyraxan fries. I think that's the Eero fries that I love from Paradise Garden Grill because it looks almost exactly the same.
It looks very similar. It looks very similar. it blows my mind how like they can go from like this like these clearly like well thought out like Star Wars dishes to dark side pretzel.
Well, I think they probably also want to make something safe for like kids and stuff.
And,
like,
it's totally true. It's just so funny. Like that's the best they could do.
Or dark side dip.
Dark side dip.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. I mean, some of this sounds pretty good. I mean,
what is on the indoor forest churro?
I don't know. You can't tell. It just looks like maybe like a sprinkles and like a drizzle of some kind of cream.
It looks like peanut butter drizzle and cilantro.
The Wookiee parfait looks kind of interesting. And I heard you say the strawberry macaron. It looks like Boba Fett.
It does.
It does look like Boba Fett.
Oh, they have the blue cream soda. It's gonna be back.
Oh, the blue cream.
Was so
the
good
blue
last
cream
year.
soda was really
that
good.
was really good.
It was so good.
Bosk brew. Bosk is one of the old school bounty hunters, the lizard looking one.
Oh, they're gonna have a Death Star glow cube. Need it.
Okay. This must be at the cantina, but blue bantha with guava and dragonberry rum.
Oh yeah, that has to be at Oga's.
Look at this Kashyyyk cold brew, looking like a Wookiee.
That's fun.
Yeah, I mean overall, I don't know how I feel about this.
I love that they got really creative with the food. To be honest,
the food looks very creative. The biggest downside, though, again, is like
they have Grogu beignets.
Oh, Dagobah bite beignets. Yeah, I didn't realize those were beignets when I looked at it. I thought it was like a little cake or pie with the little Yodas on it. I just wish these foods were available longer.
Yes.
So compared to when you guys went to Throwback Night, because just as an outside observer, it seems like there's a ton more food for this.
Way more food.
Like there's like almost everything has like specialty foods, like and a lot of it.
Yeah. Like Magic Journeys could not get through all this food. Like they're not gonna be able, they better be going to every Star Wars night. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. They're gonna basically be just taking one bite of everything and then just throwing like the rest of it away.
Even if that's all you did, you just literally don't have time to get to all this, But I am glad they dropped the list now. We're more than a week out, basically. And it's gonna give us all we are. I guess the first one's not. They go Tuesday. But it gives everybody a chance to plan. The
nice thing is that you'll be able to at least hear from people on Tuesday what's good and what to like avoid, so you can kind of like make your judgment call there too.
Very true. Very true. Overall, I think it looks good.
Are they not having the parade, the lightsaber parade?
It's the dressed up parade is there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was called Fleet of Fandom.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think it looks like it could be fun.
Okay, can I say that I love that they're having a speeder bike photo op?
Oh yeah,
where they're actually going to have like a cardboard cutout, I'm sure, in Critter Country instead of just using the one that's by the not Doc Ondor's the Build Your Lightsaber.
Yeah, by Savi's.
Yeah, Savi's.
I mean, to be fair, Savi's isn't like the speeder bike most people think of, I think.
It's
but,
true.
I bet you the speeder bike looks very like Endor speeder bike.
Right.
But I agree. Like, they could use a real prop, at least, All right, let me stop sharing my screen there. We're probably missing like a ton of comments. Not too many, I don't think.
No, it's hopping back and forth.
Queen Amidala is new, I think. I don't remember her being there last year. They had Leia and Ahsoka. No Ahsoka and Bo is shocking. Yeah, I was... Ahsoka's not as shocking because they had problems with it last year.
Right.
So I think if we're going to get Ahsoka, it's going to be after her show comes out. But Bo is shocking. I thought we would get Bo for sure. Because I was telling Crystal, and even I think our live last night, like Bo is such an easy character for them to do.
Really easy.
Because like any small guy or petite female can play that character. Mm-hmm. Like they're in a costume. Like
with the helmet.
Basically anyone who plays like any of the normal characters that are like Mickey height could play that character.
Right.
And the character could even be a little taller. It just can't be as tall as Din and Boba.
Right.
That's all it has. It doesn't have to be a little shorter than that.
And even if the friends with Mando, like he's pretty tall.
Yeah.
Because when I had the interaction with him, and why can't I think of her name right now?
Finnick.
Yes. Like he's like a good like probably half a foot taller than her. So
Yeah, you could just grab whoever is playing, Black Widow or Captain Marvel and just bring them over.
Exactly.
Yeah, agreed.
The Wasp.
Right?
Yeah.
Julie said, I'm happy with Chopper being there, but no other Rebels crew. I mean,
they had Sabine and
They
Ezra.
had Sabine and Ezra, so at least we got them. No Hera though. Hera would be cool to see too.
Hera would be so awesome.
But she's also kind of in like a weird place where like I think like the
you either know her or you don't.
And yeah, I don't think she's as noticeable as like Ahsoka, right?
After the Ahsoka show, since she's in it, that probably would be more likely to have it since she's
I think so
too. Like next year's.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ezra and Sabine and Captain Rex, but I meant all of the Rebels. Absolutely, got you. Well, one of the Rebels can't come, but I guess it doesn't matter. He could, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the chocolate dessert thing. That's Val's name on it, apparently. She said, "I'm the kid." That's fair. Okay.
Oh my god, Val, I miss you.
Did they have Star Wars night before Galaxy's Edge opened? No.
No,
they did not.
No, they just had the Star Wars celebration.
Yeah,
like,
it was
in the parks and like throughout the parks.
Yeah, there was like Star Wars stuff. Yeah, like on May 4th and the weekend of, like the First Order would march with all the stormtroopers and stuff like that. But I mean, the after hours events are fairly new from like 2017 and 18 on. So we only had a couple years of them before COVID shut everything down.
Right.
And then they've really like kicked in full. But yeah, there was no Star Wars night prior to Galaxy's Edge. Do you recommend making lightsabers in Savis? I think it's amazing. I
honestly like watching Nick build a lightsaber. I cried the first time.
Yeah.
I cried when Mason built his first one. I cried when I built my first one.
Anyone who tells you, like, if you're a decently big Star Wars fan,
yes,
can you buy a better lightsaber for that price? Absolutely. You can get a better one online. But the one online, I mean, technically you could build it yourself, I guess, with like soldering the PCB boards and stuff, but it's not the same as like being in a room with other Star Wars nerds, picking your parts, lighting it up. I don't think you can go wrong with it. I think everybody who's a Star Wars fan should put the money aside and do it at least once.
Yeah.
Especially now since it's back to the way it was before the shutdown.
Yes.
Because they have everything back. It's, you're in there, you're with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The girls and I did it in 2019, and it was definitely like worth the experience. And it's my only lightsaber I have. So
yeah. I've done it too many times to count, but I have 3 lightsabers currently, plus Crystal's. Crystal did it once. We paid for our nephew to do it. He loved it.
Yeah, I also felt really bad that I made him go on Rise and totally forgot that the fall was in there, and he had like the biggest panic attack, and I died with him. And I was like, let's go build a lightsaber. Let's go.
Is a DJ on Main Street new? I
think it is.
I don't know where they're going to set it up.
I wonder if they'll be at the... I mean...
Don't they do it?
The past 2 years, they haven't had the train running.
Yeah.
So if they put him up on top of the train station, I feel like that would be pretty cool.
That could be cool. I don't know where it'll be, but we'll show you.
Where do they have him for New Year's?
The castle.
The castle, I thought.
So, but do you think maybe they'll just set up a stand up there for the DJ?
It says Main Street, right?
Oh, so yeah, then you're probably right, Crystal. It's probably on the train station. That would make the most sense.
Yeah, Main Street.
Where they throw them. Kevin, Theme Park Adventure, said, "Hey, Crystal."
Hi.
I realize they can see you now since we're not in like zoomed in mode showing our screen. So
yeah, there or right at the where the Mickey is, the 100 Mickey behind him.
That would be interesting, like by
right
the flagpole area.
Yeah, but at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. It should be a fun event. I'm not blown away.
It's gonna be Chris Rogers.
I wish.
I know, me too.
I not blown away by like the guide, but I think it was like it's what I expected, I guess,
Yeah.
But the food offerings do look pretty good. Like it looks like they went all out with food offerings.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the variety, if nothing else, is like there's a lot of stuff there.
There is. It looks like they have everything Even UQ being a little bit more on the safe food option side of
You can
things.
say I'm picky. It's fine.
It looks like they'll even have something for you. So
yeah, they have the Euro fry, so I'll be okay.
Marty wanted to know name of the Thrawn books you suggested again. Do you remember the name of them?
The original version is the Heir to the Empire trilogy, and then the newer version is Thrawn Ascendancy.
Yeah. So you want to? I would recommend you can go back and read the original version later if you want, but I would start with like the new stuff because that's what's going to tie in.
I'm going, guys.
All right.
Bye.
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 Thanks for coming down to help.
Of course.
I would start with the new stuff. That way it ties into the Ahsoka show.
Yeah.
And again, if you guys can watch Rebels before then, highly, highly recommend it because a lot of what they're starting in Ahsoka like ends in Rebels, if that makes sense. Cool. I don't know. How's your time, Dave? You want to start wrapping it up?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, cool. I think to wrap it up, are you cool maybe like touching on like the future, like what we're looking forward to coming up?
Yeah, totally. So we mentioned the Ahsoka show quite a bit. I'm looking forward to that. I'm very curious about the Acolyte. That show intrigues me quite a bit since it's like one of the first older Star Wars universe shows. And so I'm very curious. I don't know if you've read, Nick, the stuff that takes place during the High Republic era, any of those books that like take place during that time period.
I haven't, but I've
only read the first one.
I've been ready to pull the trigger on them though. I heard they're pretty good. I heard they get good.
Yeah, I've read the first one and I read the first comic series for it. It's interesting but I think that the Acolyte touches on kind of the stuff that you and I were talking about of let's see someone other than Anakin go through that journey of what it means to be a Jedi, what it means to, fall, that kind of stuff. Like I'm hoping it's in the similar vein of like Andor, where not everything is black and white, even though the Jedi may be, good guys, not everything in the show is black and white itself.
Yeah, agreed. And just for everybody in the chat who's maybe not familiar with that, Acolyte is a show that is going to focus on the bad guys for a change, right? The bad guy, who is either going to be some kind of Sith or fallen Jedi or something. And it takes place during the era of time they're calling the High Republic, which is kind of really the Jedi at their kind of the Jedi and the Republic at they're kind of their peak, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By the time we catch them in Phantom Menace, the Jedi have already been kind of like clouded by the dark side. They're kind of making the wrong choices. They've kind of become, for lack of a better term, like pawns of the Senate. Like they kind of only answer to the Senate. They go during the High Republic, they are like full-fledged, like in their height. Mm-hmm. And to their knowledge, there's no Sith in existence anymore. They've extinguished the Sith. It's a time of like unbridled peace and wealth in the Republic. So it'll be really interesting to see how this dark side user plays into it.
So I'm excited for that. And then I am really, really intrigued and looking forward to what they do with Rey moving forward. Because I think, for all of yours and my, like, we'll just say, for lack of a better word, disappointments with the kind of how the sequels turned out. Right. Rey herself is like such a popular character, especially with like younger Star Wars fans, that I hope that they get a good Rey movie that's just focused on her and showing her doing her thing. And I think that there's a lot of potential there, especially if they can mend fences with John Boyega to kind of do some of the things with the Finn storyline. I think that we're kind of teased out. So I think if they can do those two things, I think that movie series, because I'm assuming it's going to be a series, would be potentially very special.
I'm going to agree with you on that 100%. I don't hate Rey. I hate the writing.
Right.
I love Daisy Ridley. I love the enthusiasm she had for the character. I absolutely love John Boyega, and I want him to star in everything. Like I'm if they fire our boy if they fire our boy over there playing I'm blanking on his name right now. Kang, like hire John Boyega. Like I love the guy. He's very adamant about not working with Disney again, but I think he'll come back for the right story.
Yeah.
You know, and so that would be super interesting. My biggest concern with the Rey movie, though, is going to be the same problem I feel like The Force Awakens had, even if it wasn't written poorly, is that they have this giant time skip.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, let's say, like, we pick up with Rey. It's supposed to be, I think they're saying, like, 15 years. Whether that's what they settle on or not, we'll have to see.
Right.
But, like, so 15 years after we've last seen her, she's obviously probably, hopefully, not still struggling with finding out she's like a Palpatine, right?
Mm-hmm.
She shouldn't be struggling with, is she actually a Skywalker?
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, in that 15 years, she's figured out who she is, right? Because if she hasn't, it doesn't really make, that's a lot of time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you always have the worry, to me, when you skip too much time, that if the interesting stuff happened off camera, that stuff can't be more interesting than what you're doing on camera. Like, it's okay to skip major events, but if the idea of those major events is more interesting than the rest of the movie, you have a problem, right?
The Thor Love and Thunder problem, where his time with the Guardians is way more interesting than what happened in the rest of the movie.
Exactly, 100%. And so I think that's kind of like one of those the problems that hopefully they can overcome. But again, I think they're still going to have the same problem. There's obviously a subset of the Star Wars fandom that hates her, period, right? They hate the character. They're never going to accept it. But there's going to be a lot of people that could maybe accept a well-written story. But the problem is with Rey, and this is my biggest concern about them skipping so much time, is that, like, we've never really seen Rey have to learn or try anything.
Mm-hmm.
She's just kind of good at it. And okay, yes, she's a Palpatine. Yes, she's a strong Force user, but like that doesn't mean she just should be good at everything. She should be like Luke. Luke was using the Force intuition without knowing it. That's why he was able to snipe little womp rats in his T-16 in Beggar's Canyon, and he's a good pilot. But he was doing all that without knowing what he was doing, right? But that doesn't mean he knew how to like wield a lightsaber or anything like that. And I think like they made Rey learn all that too easy. Like she just force controls someone's mind in the first movie and all that. But I worry that that same group of people, if we catch up with her 15 years later and she's already settled into being a semi-decent Jedi and training others, like we didn't get to learn and see her like struggle with any of that.
I hear you. I think my hope with that is that I know a large part of it was they wanted to make sure that there was a strong character who is a female who's also a Jedi, and you know what I mean. They were trying to avoid some of the tropes that maybe like she was already going to have an uphill battle to begin with, so they're trying to avoid something like that. But I feel like at this point in the Star Wars universe, there's enough characters, I guess, to go around that they can now start to show, you know, her walking into a lake like Din and tripping and falling, and you know what I mean? Like those foibles can be, she can have some of those because it's not just all resting on her. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think it's interesting, and it's important to remember that like interesting characters are like realistic, and being perfect's not realistic, you know?
Completely.
Somebody, let's see what we got here real quick. When you go on the rides, can you always store a lightsaber somewhere? Sometimes that's actually super difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend building a lightsaber as one of the last things you're going to do at the park.
Mm-hmm.
Get the reservation for the evening. And one, carrying the lightsaber around all day sucks. But more importantly, what's the first thing you want to do when you build a lightsaber? You want to play with it.
Yeah.
And the lightsaber is never as much fun to play with at Galaxy's Edge, except when it's dark. So if you can wait to the evening, maybe after dinner, you're winding down, grab a lightsaber reservation, build it in the evening, take some pictures in front of the Falcon, take some pictures with it around Galaxy's Edge and have a good time. But walking around with it in the dark is the best part. So,
yeah, anytime I've taken the saber, that's basically I've kind of consigned myself that I'm not going to ride anything. It's just there for me to kind of play with the saber.
Yeah, normally for me, and this is a super extreme version of it, but if I'm gonna take my saber in for like Star Wars night, I hate carrying the saber blade around. before Star Wars night, so I'll take it without a blade and I'll buy a new blade while I'm there.
That's hardcore.
And it's ridiculous because the blades are like $30. But then I just end up putting them on like offer up for $30, and someone always buys them who can't get to the park and wants an extra blade. So that's what I do. It's kind of extreme, but I hate carrying the dang thing around. Rachel, this is non-Star Wars, but she said, I hope they don't fire Majors. I will chime in. I hope they don't fire him until they learned what really happened. And I don't mean like what his PR publicist says happened. I mean video, concrete evidence that he did or did not commit domestic violence. And if he did commit domestic violence, I 100% hope Marvel drops him and he faces the consequences of his actions. But if he's innocent, I hope that he is like able to move on with his career and be the amazing actor that we all think he's going to be. Who are the top 3 strongest Force users? I think it's kind of like Marvel. It depends who's writing them.
Yeah. Filoni gave his like number 1. So according to Filoni, it's Luke. Luke is number 1, the strongest Force user ever. So
okay.
that's his pick. Not like you said, it depends on who's writing it. So if you were to ask, Lucas may have somebody different, or you know what I mean. But according to Filoni, it's Luke. Luke is the strongest Force user that there was. You probably would have to throw in Yoda, and then honestly, Palpatine would probably be your top 3.
Yeah, my top 3 probably wouldn't have Yoda. I think by the time we get to Yoda, he's like super clouded by the dark side, but I do think he's like top 5. I think top 3 is Luke, Vader, not Anakin, but Vader, and Palpatine. I think Vader. I throw Vader over Yoda just because the amount of like, I know they talk about it in the comics and stuff a lot, but he's literally using the Force to like survive. Like he's in, like,
he's keeping himself alive
all the time. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think Kylo was a lot stronger than we give him credit for too. I don't think he's quite top 5, but like he was able to do a lot of things we'd never seen before, especially like stopping like blaster bolts. But yeah, so looking forward, I know we got sidetracked a little bit. Looking forward, Alkalite looks dope. I'm really excited for that. They also announced a movie or something that's going to take place at like the beginning of the Jedi Order, possibly. And I thought that sounded kind of interesting too. I don't know where they're going to go with it, but I really do wish they would give us some like real old Republic stuff though,
Completely.
And then we didn't touch on Andor season 2, but super excited for more of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get more of what we loved, but they don't just like, I'd like to see some more growth in Andor too, and see like we've kind of seen him make that change to like embracing the rebellion by the end. But now I want to see him grow into like a leader a little bit, right? I feel like he is one, but he's like reluctantly so, and maybe he always will be, but I'd like to see him learn some more leader qualities, some more skills that'll make him a better leader, because he's a little bit about impetuous, I feel like, still.
Yeah, and by the time you meet him in Rogue One, he knows how to lead a squad of people into the job.
Yeah, successfully, I was thinking if they bring a lightsaber Star Wars night, can we bring it on the rides? But sounds like nope. It's just really hassle. There's nowhere to store the blades. So yeah, if you're going for Star Wars night, you kind of
I would plan on just not riding anything.
I would plan on not riding anything, or bringing just your saber and buying a blade and hoping everybody else doesn't do the same thing and they sell out blades. How long come Luke couldn't fight back against Palpatine's Force lightning in return? I think that mostly it was just a lack of skill. I don't think he knew like how to counter that. I don't think in his training that Yoda prepared him for that. Luke's whole thing is kind of that he was like half-ass trained, If you remember, he left Yoda early to go save his friends, which, right or wrong, we'll never be sure, but he didn't really ever finish his training either, right?
And Filoni is like, when he says Luke is like the number 1, we're talking about like Luke when he dies. Spoiler, when he dies in like Last Jedi. Like by that point, the fact that he's able to basically force project himself across the galaxy, realistic enough to fool every single person there and interact with it physically, and maintain that illusion for a significant period of time is like an incredible feat of like just mastery of the Force. And so it's like by that point in his life, he's like the best.
Right. And you know, the question is very key, right? Force user, not like best fighter, best duelist, like it's overall power of the Force, right? Ethan said Vader tater tots are wrong. I'm down. I would put Yoda in my personal top 3. I don't think if you put Yoda in your top 3, it's wrong. It's just not in mine, you know? He was kicking Palpatine's butt. I mean, you're not wrong. We have to remember at that point, though, Palpatine was fresh off being severely wounded. So Palpatine was probably not at full strength when he fought Yoda, just as an FYI.
Yeah, he had just basically fought Mace Windu, who is considered one of like you had mentioned like fighters. Like a lot of like people consider Mace Windu to be like one of the top actual like fighter, like lightsaber duelists. So
yo, what up? Welcome. After the series end, do you think there will still be more Star Wars out there? Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think Star Wars is going anywhere anytime soon. And I think that's why it's really important and great for us all as Star Wars fans that Mandalorian was as popular and continues to be as popular as it is, because it proves that not every story has to be about a Jedi, has to be about a Skywalker, has to be about these characters that we grew up with. You know, the characters in the beginning of that were all brand new. Nothing was reused other than the fact that Grogu is the same species as Yoda. But like that doesn't really mean anything, you know?
And I think it's cool too that they seem to be committed to the idea of giving every type of fan their own Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like you're mentioning like Andor's for a very specific type of like TV watcher.
Right.
You know, Mando's kind of more of that like broad-based one. You have like stuff like Bad Batch for kids. You know what I mean? And so I feel like it does feel like they are committed to the idea of let's make sure that no matter what your taste, there's a Star Wars that's out there for you to watch.
I think and I do think that's accurate. And I think it's a good way of doing it. It's better than some of the alternatives, I think.
Yeah.
For sure. Cool, man. Well, other than that, I guess the last thing we'll end on, because I know it's getting late. You and I both got work tomorrow. The last kind of thing I'm thinking about is like, what is your like passion Star Wars project? Like, what haven't they made? Like, if you were given the keys to the Star Wars universe, is there a project you would will into existence?
That's a good question, because I mean they've really kind of touched on so much stuff already.
Yeah.
That it's difficult. But I do think like legitimately, I probably would want them to, I guess, and maybe the Acolyte will be it, but kind of fulfill the promise of the idea of let's take someone who fell and watch him come back. Because I think that's the one story in Star Wars they've never really told. Anyone who's come back dies. And I feel like there's a strong story to be told. And I think it's especially inspiring one of, if you've screwed up, how do you fix it and make your life right again? And I think it's a relatable story. And I think it's something that would be good in Star Wars because, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily, I think it's a good way of dealing with Jedi without them being, you don't fall into that they're all perfect trope. You know what I mean?
Right. That's a really great one. I'm going to go the opposite. I know we talked about like some old Republic movies with Revan and Malik and stuff. Since we already kind of touched on that, that would probably be my passion project. But the other one that I would have a hard time picking between as well would be if you're familiar with Darth Bane. So for those of you guys that don't know, you know, in the movies, they kind of touch on the rule of 2 for Sith, always a master and apprentice, no more, right? Even though we find out Sidious doesn't really follow that, or he doesn't, his apprentices think they do, but they kind of don't. But I would love to see Darth Bane, who basically the story of the Sith is every time they come into real power, they backstab and turn on each other and end up losing it, right? Kind of like the Mandalorians do to each other, which is what's going to happen when you're like a warrior culture, I think. But Darth Bane is kind of the first one to realize like we can't be Sith as a giant group. We have to be like a small contingent master and apprentice, and then that apprentice eventually kills the master, becomes the master, and then takes a new apprentice. And Darth Bane has some amazing stories. He's a really cool Sith. And I think what I'd like to see out of Sith in a movie is the only Sith we've ever really gotten in movies, not animation too, because Darth Maul kind of is that way. But we've never seen a Sith who's like 100% committed, full on evil in their height. Like we get Palpatine, but he's not the main character, right?
Right.
He's doing his stuff, but we don't get to see it all. Darth Maul's probably the closest we get, even though he's obviously like heavily corrupted because he was like taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
So even he's not even fully evil all the time, right? He's kind of like anti-hero sometimes, unless it's Kenobi.
Yeah.
But I would love to see just like full on Sith in his power, could care less about coming back to the light. And like, I think that would just be an interesting story to show.
Yeah, that would definitely. Yeah, exactly. I think that would at least like. I think that there's so much just stuff that they haven't really touched on that they still could go forward without having to do, just stuff about Skywalkers or Jedi moving forward.
100%. Real quick, we're gonna start wrapping up, you guys. But Marty had a great question. He's from this. It sounds like he's like looking at more Star Wars stuff, which is awesome. If this helped you like get more into like the Star Wars universe right now, that is awesome. But he said Filoni, and he's also a director. Wonder how come he wasn't put in charge of the new films. So I think it's really important to know that before Filoni started helping out on Mandalorian, he'd never done anything but animation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not always a skill that transfers over to directing TV or movies. So I do think there could be a point where he is given like a full-on movie to do. But I do think Filoni is probably better in small dose directing episodes and then being behind the scenes doing a lot of writing.
Agreed. Yeah. Because I mean, we've seen it before. Like, they've given, for example, live action movies to some of the Pixar directors, and they just don't really turn out well.
Right. It's just such a different. It's just such a different like vibe,
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. People saying, "Hey, Nick, I was just 12 years old when I saw the original Star Wars. That's so cool. The first time I thought I saw Star Wars, I must have been like 7, and I thought it was so stupid. I was so bored. I remember telling my dad, there's too much political stuff. And then I don't know, something happened, but before I was 10, by the time I was 10, I was fully invested in all things Star Wars. But I don't know when that change happened. How old were you when you first saw Star Wars, Dave?
The first movie I have a memory of seeing in the theater is Empire Strikes Back. My first memory is seeing the scene where they're carting Han Solo, frozen in carbonite, out of Cloud City.
And that's on an original release or a re-release?
On an original release, like literally the first movie I ever I have any memory of ever seeing in it, in a theater at any point. Yeah.
Dang, dating yourself there, Q.
Completely.
I wasn't even alive when the first 2 movies came out.
Dang. Yeah. I wasn't alive when the first one came out.
No, you weren't. No. And then Return of the Jedi came out in 85.
Yes. No. Is it 83 or 85? Yeah.
I think it was 85. I think it's 85. May 25th, 1985, I think.
No, it had to be 83 because we're doing the 40th anniversary this year.
You're right. So I wasn't alive when any of the Star Wars original movies came out. That's wild. How come I look older than you, Q? Like you've aged much more gracefully.
Yeah, it's that joke that like I've looked the same since I was 15, which stunk when I was 15, but it's kind of cool now.
That's a good way to put it. Fun fact: I've only ever seen. I saw all the prequels in theaters. I saw all of the sequels in theaters. I only ever saw A New Hope in theaters when they re-released the special editions.
Oh yeah.
My parents took me to see the first one, but they did not take me to see Empire and Return because, and I quote, "We've already seen those movies 100 times." It's like, bro. and then they never re-released them again. So now that they're going to re-release Return of the Jedi in theaters, I may try to see that, but
I'm
really
thinking I might
rather
go see it this
see
weekend too.
Empire. You know, I'd really rather see Empire though, but we'll
Right.
see. Can we talk about how cool Darth Maul is? He's super cool. And for those of you that have never watched Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that, anything past Phantom Menace, Darth Maul does not die. He has a really kind of wild but then amazing like arc happen. He probably has one of the best arcs in all of Star Wars, to be honest.
Completely agree.
Yeah, even though you kind of have to stick with it. Some of the early stuff in Clone Wars with his like
his brother and his like family. Yeah, it's weird.
It's a little crazy. It's a little crazy. Nick, I also have a regional Empire Strikes Back movie poster, and it was signed by Barry Nolan, who worked for Industrial Light and Magic. That's super cool. My dad has a European. My dad collects movie posters. He has a European Star Wars New Hope poster, which is amazing. I love the art on it. He does not have an Empire Strikes Back, but my mom got him a Revenge of the Jedi movie poster.
Oh, that's cool.
It is original. It doesn't have it has the release date, but not year, because they didn't know when it was going to drop for sure. And it's amazing. I love it. It's mine when he dies. I've told him that since I was like 9. So, and then lastly, we have Mark. Who was Darth Sidious again? Wouldn't it be cool to see more about him? So Darth Sidious is Palpatine. So Emperor Palpatine is like his normal, like legal name is Palpatine. Yeah. He was a senator from Naboo. Who he may not even have actually been from Naboo. I don't remember in the books. They did have a book about him, but his Sith name is Darth Sidious. Just like Count Dooku, that's his real name, but his Sith name is Lord Tyrannus. So,
or like Anakin's real name is Anakin Skywalker, but his Sith name is Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, exactly. The only people that we don't really know if they had a regular name is like Darth Maul has always just been Maul, as far as we know. So, but yeah, he has a full story. So. But I would still love to see more about him. There's a lot that we don't learn about him and his master, which was like Darth Plagueis. So could have been cool. So, I got Sidious confused with Darth Plagueis. Oh yeah, so it would be great to see something about Darth Plagueis. I think for anything like that, I'd rather see it in animated form at this point, though. I don't want like de-aged Ian McKellen or whatever his name is, Ian McDonald.
Those Tales of the Jedi shows that they did. Hopefully they do another season and they can tackle it there.
Yeah, I would love that. So yeah. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Q, thank you for coming on and
of course
and nerding out. You know, one of the highlights is whenever we're at Disney together and we get to just nerd out on Star Wars and stuff like that. Hopefully you guys in chat enjoyed. Let us know, make sure you leave a like, comment. If you want us to do more of these, I'm always down as long as we can work it around Q's schedule as well. We would love to do more stuff like this, though, especially if you're interested, Q. So
completely, yeah. It's nice to be able to talk about this stuff with like someone, and also to answer everybody's questions and stuff. I really had a good time today.
Yeah, and I was a little worried. Like you, myself, and Rudio, we had the one where we pre-recorded, which was great. But being able to kind of bounce around and talk and get other people's opinions and answer questions, like I thought that was a lot of fun.
Agreed.
So I like the live format. I think it worked really well.
Totally.
So, yeah. Thank you guys all for joining. Alex said thanks for the stream, guys. Be Yourself Adventurous said thank you. May the 4th be with all of you. Yeah, it looks like everybody really enjoyed it. We could probably make that happen. This was fun. Star Wars chats are always great. Yeah, maybe we can do this. Maybe after Guardians comes out, Q, maybe we do a Guardians recap and talk about like, the trilogy as a whole, the movie, and then like where are the Guardians going from there? Like, what do we see? Because we have no idea where the Guardians are going. And if you guys saw the real Crystal posted over on Instagram or TikTok today, she's not ready. So.
Yeah, totally. I'm totally down. Yeah, as you know, I can talk like forever about both Marvel and Star Wars. So
exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for hanging out. We're gonna end it here.
Guys.
Hope you guys have a great time, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.